too. I started everything else, and that's
Oh yeah, that would help.
I was like, why is no one here yet? And that's because I haven't hit start. And so I was like, makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, we can see you now, sir. We could hear you. I think we have an audible and a visual connection. Welcome to the show. How's it going? How you doing?
Going good. Yeah, like it seems like
you hesitated there. You're like, I'm not sure yet. I don't know.
No. I didn't mean anything by that. Things are going. I was going to say like it seems like a lot of the conversations that we're having on like my pod are starting to bleed out into other communities, which is kind of new. Like we kind of had our own little corner of the internet, and now it's like generating all these different discussions. So that's kind of new.
Do you like that, or are you feeling like kind of a certain kind of way about that? Like some people like to be insular, right? They like, okay, we don't want this to break containment. We want this to stay within house, things like that. But other people do like it when it kind of, they can be the, I don't know, the fuel, if you will, the spawning point of discourse. So I'm just curious what you prefer.
No, I love it. To be clear,
Go ahead.
Because I feel like I've been talking about a lot of these things for a little bit now, and like I'm getting validated in a way that I don't think I was before. But it seems like there's a lot of people that agree that there are some really big problems that we just haven't really talked about a lot. And I'm seeing kind of like a renewed sense of a renewed kind of impulse to be more directly confrontational with a lot of these bad ideas, which I think is just really necessary in this moment. If we're going to learn the lessons, and then what I hope to do is like head this stuff off before 2028. Like I don't want to get to 2028 and then they're doing the same shit that they've been doing for a really long time. And my thinking is that if we can get people thinking about these things now, they'll be able to identify it really quickly later on. And then hopefully that
this
will
is of course
Go ahead.
This is exactly what your opposition says, right? That the reason that they need to go so hard on the Dems right now is because, I mean, now I don't know how consistent this is because they were going very hard on the Dems even when it was very close to the 2024 election. But their claim, at least, is, we should be hashing all of this out now, further from the election, further even from the 2026 election. So we're not having this fight right when it counts.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the best time to do it. We're far enough. I tweeted about this, but like we're far enough removed from the election in November where I think people's emotions have sort of stabilized. We're kind of like acclimating to this Trump thing. Like right after the election, people were very upset and angry and scared and nervous and all those things. And then we're also far enough removed from the midterms where I think it won't be a distraction. I think once we get to 3 months, 4 months until the midterms, I'll definitely switch gears a bit and start covering the various races, and I won't spend as much time talking about this stuff. But no, it is right now is the perfect time to have these conversations for sure.
I think that I share kind of your instinct here, though maybe I'm a little more maybe a little more doomer pilled on this because I don't know if this is going to actually stop it from being a problem in the midterms, and more importantly, well, not more importantly, but I guess more pertinently, because I think they'll be a lot louder during the 2028 run-up to the election there. I worry that the primary we're going to have in 2028 it has a potential to be kind of a snatch defeat from the jaws of victory kind of moment. How I view the political landscape currently, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, MAGA's failing, right? It's failing to govern. And I think a lot of people are running away from Trump on the issues. I think that they're having a lot of problems now. The economy is tanking in a lot of ways. The jobs report numbers getting revamped, and then him firing the jobs report person to appoint his own little special yes woman, yes man. I think people see that, and I think that it bodes well for our chances in the midterms, at least. But never underestimate the Democrats' ability to, as I said earlier, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So I do worry that there are people who would, whether well-meaning, right, or for nefarious and malicious purposes want to see us fail because they do better personally under a Republican administration, under a Trump administration. And I say that because it's much easier for them to get on big ticket shows such as like NPR, for example, if Trump's in office and the Democrats and the more liberal-minded people are looking for any weapon they can to fight against Trump. So I do worry that that's the case. I guess let me just ask you, since you're our guest today, what is your kind of biggest... Well, can you describe the problem you're having with these people? Can you describe who they are, what they're doing that you find that we need to have a hash out about now, and why it matters? Just give us kind of like the TLDR, please.
Well, the biggest problem right now is Trump and the MAGA movement and the unique threat that they present to this country. You said we a moment ago. Can we just back up real quick? Is Tali in the we yet? Are you leaning towards? You're still.
Uh-oh.
You haven't. You always mute your mic. This has happened a few times.
Oh, sorry. I do. Yeah, my bad. Wick and I were just talking about this off camera right before we started. I care very much about the success of the Democrats. Yes, in the 2026 and 2028 elections, but more broadly because I have no faith in the direction of the right. I think we need a strong left to counterbalance the right. So I want a healthy, strong, successful, sane Democratic Party. I'm not a registered Democrat anymore, So like if that puts me off the team, that's fine. Maybe I'm, just an observer right now. But I want the Democrats to succeed. I feel like that. Feel like I've demonstrated that, but not necessarily in all the conversations where the only topic of conversation is my vote for Trump. I do have interests outside of that too.
Okay, I just wanted to get a sense of like where you were at, if it had changed since the last time we spoke. But the biggest problem to me is obviously Trump and MAGA. I view them as an existential threat, and so because I view that as such a problem, I'm looking at the kind of media coverage that happens in lefty media, alternative media specifically. And I'm noticing a similar through line from 2016 when I first started to get engaged in politics again to where we're at now. There's just certain behaviors, or rather narrative framing, that has persisted throughout the last 8 years of me. I'm trying to say less. So if the last 8 years of paying attention to that space, they're kind of saying the same things that they've been saying this whole time. So Cenk is a really good example of this when he went on Jubilee recently. Kyle Kulinski put out a video a few days ago where he was talking about the Democrats' low approval ratings, and he started getting into why he thinks that is and what the problems are. And it's a collection of narratives, but it all serves kind of a larger narrative. Their narrative is that the Democrats are controlled opposition. Their narrative is that the Democratic Party is completely controlled by the donors, like that. What Cenk likes to say. It's just always left-wing populism is always about blaming like the donor class, big money or whatever. And they are telling their audience over and over and over and over again that the Democratic Party does not give a single flying fuck about any of their voters. That the Democratic Party is basically 99% Hitler compared to Republican 100% Hitler. And to me, it's not enough if they say something like, I'm still going to plug my nose and vote for Kamala. If you're doing all this harmful rhetoric, and we can get into more specifics because I have specific observations of things that they say that fit this narrative. I'm starting to plot it out on a map. But if you spend 4 years telling your audience that the Democratic Party is 99% Hitler, if you come out shortly before the election to say you're going to support the candidate, that's not enough for me. I still think that you're bad for voter turnout. I think you're doing more harm than good by pushing this narrative. And oftentimes so they get into, I've been saying it a lot recently. There's this thing called Green Lantern theory of politics.
Okay, what is that? I'm not a comic book guy, so you're gonna have to walk me through that one. Green Lantern theory. What is that?
I'm so glad you asked, because my chat loves nothing more than me describing Green Lantern theory of politics for the 50th time.
Sorry, I don't know Green Lantern. I'm sorry.
Fuck my chat. I love talking about it because I think it's such a good way of identifying one of the big problems. And so Green Lantern is a popular DC character. He has a powerful green ring, and he can basically summon and make anything you can think of with this ring. You know, he can make a fucking Gatling gun, and then Guy Gardner made like a muzzle for a giant kaiju beast in the recent Superman film. And when you apply it to politics, what these people think of when they think of the presidency, they think that the presidency is an all-powerful position. And if they don't get things like a single payer passed or a $15 an hour minimum wage or codifying Roe when Obama had 60 votes, they think that it's a failure of the president, that he just didn't try hard enough, or he didn't use, or he wasn't charismatic enough. So like Green Lantern, Reagan would be, he was so charismatic that he was able to just like whip the votes that way. And Green Lantern LBJ was that he was like bullied people enough to get everything he wanted to. So there's like different kind of like applications of the theory. But the point is that everyone in that orbit, from Jank to Kyle to Crystal to all of them, literally every single one of them, Emma Vigeland, Sam Cedar, all of them, Hassan certainly, Vosh certainly, they all think that the president chooses not to do the things that they fail to get done. So it's not that Joe Biden didn't have enough votes to get a public option. He just didn't even try to get it done. Or it's not that he couldn't have. It's not that he just didn't have the support of Joe Manchin for $15 an hour minimum wage. He failed because he should have, for example, sent the DOJ to go after Joe Manchin's daughter, which is something that they literally say, by the way. But it is this wildly distorted view of what politics are. It completely ignores the role of the Congress, and it sets people up. All their viewers become accustomed to this thinking, and they think that the president should just be able to, if you can't bully your Congress into doing the thing, just executive order everything. That's what the Vanguard said when they were on our show. So that's what that is. I tried to be concise about it. But.
No, I think that I know what you're talking about. I refer to it as the do-somethingers, right? The people who are like, oh, we can't get this. Why doesn't the president do something? And then you ask, well, what would you have them do is the next question. And they're like, I don't know anything. He's the president. And I get what you're saying. I understand. 2 questions on that. The first is, do you think that the people propagating this Green Lantern theory, as you're saying, do you think that they're doing it because they actually believe that this is something within the presidential power?
Yes.
So you think that they actually believe, like Kyle Kulinski, Vosh, all these people actually believe the president can just wave his magic wand or snap his fingers? Or
yes.
Interesting.
The most recent example of this was Hassan saying that he could end the war in Gaza with a phone call. That's another manifestation of like.
So I may be a little more cynical, or maybe it's worth drawing distinctions here. And I really do. It's very useful to point out people, especially when they're like media figures. But I wish we'd be talking more about like the principles or the ideas. This is not me coming down on either of you two, but just like more broadly, even the way that we talk about like Trump's failures. I think if people who want to, campaign against Trump spoke less about him as if they want to peel people off, if they just spoke about the negative impacts of some of his stuff instead of talking about him in particular. But anyway, all of that to say, I maybe agree with you when it comes to like the Vanguard boys. I won't call them men, because they seem just like uninformed. They seem to not know how government works, and so like I'm willing to, and even and even Hassan, like I don't know if I don't think Hassan is as retarded as people make him out to be, but I don't think he's any great genius either. So maybe even Hassan actually believes that this is like how government works. But for people like Kyle and Crystal, for example, they're just not dumb. They're really not dumb, and they are politically savvy, even if I don't agree with their political aims. So like I'll elaborate really quickly. The Green Lantern theory, I think you're spot on, but I also like the way that Whick labeled it the do-somethingers, because I think they do apply it to Congress people as well. It's more like this, it's not necessarily just that the people who do this kind of rhetorical trick, it's not that they just think that the president has all the power, but they believe that like each individual should be able to like enact their will, basically, and that they're not encumbered by government and by political appetite and by all of these other, and their constituents and all of these things. So like using the Slotkin interview with Crystal Ball as an example, Crystal says to her, like a 2-year-old, like, are you going to end arms sales to Israel? Like, are you going to end this? And it's like, what do you think she alone can do? Now, she's not the president, right? But it is treating her like, if you believe in something, obviously you can just will it into existence. But I don't think Crystal believes that.
No,
So there
I don't
is
think.
something a little more nefarious at play there.
No, I don't think Crystal is dumb. I think Crystal is really sharp. She's very, very sharp. If you spend any time watching her interviews, she's just clearly very prepared for these conversations. I think the agenda, like what you're calling nefarious, I think I know what's going on here. I think that this crowd, they plan to continue the strategy of making the conflict in Gaza. They want to they've made this like the lightning rod issue. And so what they're doing, and I think it's really obvious that this is what they're doing, is they want to turn the 2026 midterms into a referendum on Israel. And so they're trying to make this particular issue so toxic that they feel like they can bully or coerce or move the candidates in the direction of cutting off funds to Israel. And so to Whick's point, I do think that the 2026 midterms have the potential to be really nasty. I think Crystal Ball was trying to make an example out of Slotkin. And I think that's their way of, they want to get as many people on the record saying that it's a genocide and we should cut off aid to Israel. Yeah. And anybody who doesn't pass that purity test, they're really gonna viciously go after these people. So I think that's what that's about. If you want to call that nefarious, she would probably say that's virtuous. Like it's a virtuous goal that she has to do this.
This is the thing. I agree. I agree with you that is probably Crystal Ball's motivation here. And that is a lot of these people's, like, I call this the Omnic Cause, right? Like how every conversation you have as a Democrat has to be around Gaza, Israel, Palestine. It has to. And if you don't talk about Israel and Palestine, you are shown as, oh, you're running cover. Why aren't you covering this? Why are we talking about X when there's a genocide going on, right? And it becomes impossible to have any substantive discussion with a certain crowd because everything is related in their minds to the Omnic Cause, the one cause to rule them all. And they have decided it's Palestine for the moment. Though I don't know, because they were doing this before October 7th too, though. So there are a lot of people the Do Somethingers, the Green Lanterners, whatever you want to call them, were doing this before. And some of them just might be dumb. I don't think most of them are. And this is just my theory, okay? So we're just speculating here, okay? I think they're doing it because they don't like democracy. And they want to show the weaknesses of democracy. Say, look, the president under a liberal system can't do what we need him to do. We need something else. The Congress under a liberal system, under the Constitution, can't do what we need them to do. We need something else. And what is that something else? Well, I'll leave that to your imagination. It depends on who's saying it, right? Right wing says this too. A lot of the far right people say
that's the horseshoe.
Right?
Yeah.
They'll say things like, I've heard Nick Fuentes say things like, oh, why vote for Trump or anything? They can't get it done. We need something else. We need something to replace. Liberalism has failed. Liberalism has failed us, and it's always going to, I know Sargon of Akkad likes to say, it's always going to lead to socialism. It's always going to lead to all these wokeness and things like that. So we need another system in place. And I consider it kind of like this two-pronged assault on liberalism. And it's Gaza is a good issue from the left to kind of take it and kind of wedge it in there. I wonder, what is your answer to this, Hutch? Do you have an answer to this? If you were the senator being interviewed by Crystal Ball and you went in there and that was that, how do you answer that? What do you do? What do Democrats, politicians, what do even Democrats who are talking to their friends or maybe their co-hosts who happen to be on the left as well, who attack them or something, or start trying to push them on these things? What's the best response in your opinion?
I think you need to be much more confrontational. I think Slotkin was put in a difficult position, and I blame her team more than I blame her. It's clear that Slotkin thought that she was walking into like a CNN style hardball situation from like 2005. and she just didn't know a lot about Crystal. I think she was in a really difficult position because she was very clearly trying to compose herself, and you could see the mask slip a little bit where she let out a little bit of disdain. I especially thought it was kind of gross when Crystal Ball smeared her about taking Israeli PAC money when she hadn't taken any since 2018. That was just an obvious smear. So if I were her, I mean, I don't know. That's a difficult position. If you're a politician, maybe you have to be a little bit more composed. But for people that cover politics and that are in the space, then I think we need to, like, we don't need to nuke these bridges. Like, we don't need to go completely scorched earth. I know that's like the big conversation I think that's happening right now is like, how aggressive should we be? I know Erudite had she had an even more aggressive sort of stance than I did. But I do think at minimum, we have to really much more aggressively, much more directly start confronting their really destructive rhetoric. Because I think just for too long, they've been the dominant voices in this space to help people sort of parse through this information. And their framing is just so firmly established. And so it's going to take a second to like pick at it and expose it for its various weaknesses. But the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you're super direct and very blunt and not necessarily nice. I'm not saying you need to call these people fucking dicks and tell them you're going to fuck their moms, but you should be very direct in the sense of,
Sure.
You know, if I'm sitting across from Jank on a Jubilee episode, I might say something like, what you're saying is just infantile and juvenile. Like I would just be really, really direct about confronting it.
Do you go ahead?
Yeah, I think.
Tali.
Well, she did well when she finally pushed back, and I think she did so in a pretty calm and dignified way. She wasn't hurling insults, but she said, you know, you really need to check your facts before you have this conversation. This is not true. And she obviously was aware of her own record and was able to, you know, give all of the details about the funding. I mean, I will add that Apac is an American PAC. It's not an Israeli PAC. This just like, you know, whatever feeds into the horseshoe overlap of Israel controls America and all of that type of stuff. Not that I think you were trying to signal that, but that's what Crystal was trying to signal, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I think the conversation is about like where should people draw the boundaries and should people be excommunicated. I don't think that's really the conversation though. Like I think Pisco to a certain extent was straw manning it a bit by saying like, well, you know, it seems like no one has like a real strong criticism of how we handled the Vanguard conversation. And I don't think that this conversation, this broader conversation that now has trickled into other domains is about the way that Lib and Learn treated the Vanguard, right? It is a broader conversation about what does it mean to be on the left and what are the values that the left should be striving for. And I think like one line, and I didn't catch your whole conversation with Kyla, but it's like maybe the people who are dripping with disdain for liberalism, maybe that's a good line.
I mean, yeah, like to Wick's point, I think there's like a spectrum. So there's certainly, when we're talking about people that don't believe in liberal democracy, I do think they're more marginalized. I think they have an outsized voice, which is part of the problem, which is why I think we need to start confronting this stuff more aggressively. But if you're someone who is like self-described democratic socialist and you're 22 years old or something like that, and you're, you know, fresh out of college and you're just kind of taking an academic interest in these things, and you know, I don't know if we should chase that person out. I don't know if we should chase Econoboy out of the party.
Of course not. Look, I want to be clear. I love Econoboy. He's a good guy. I disagree with him, and I guess what I worry about, and I didn't want to make this like about, oh, Hutch, answer for your co-host crimes. Like, we're not going to do that today. I mean, we're going to talk about it a little, right? But we're not going to. I don't
think your co-hosts have committed any crimes.
Yeah, I'm being facetious.
Oh, I'm very direct with them, so it's not like
yeah. But well, for example, I'll give you an example. Like, Econoboy was on my show the other day. We were just talking about things, and Tali popped on to talk to him and asked a pretty funny little hypothetical, a play on the Hassan or Trump thing. It's like, who you voting for president? Tali bots or Mike from PA? Econoboy couldn't answer that question. That's worrisome to me. Something has gone wrong. Look, look, I wouldn't vote for Tali bots either against a Democrat. Let's be clear. No offense to you, Tali bots, right? But against Mike from PA, it's not even. It's not hard. This isn't a difficult decision. So I don't know what either Econoboy doesn't know about Mike from PA, but he did know he was banned. He knew what he was banned for. How do we fix this? Because I agree with you, we shouldn't chase 22-year-old people out of the party just because they have different views from us, but we do need to kind of educate them, I guess, for lack of a better term, or at least remind them why liberalism is good, actually. What do we do?
Or let them vote for Dems because Dems give them more of what they want than Republicans without feeling the need to concede to their ideological or governmental prescriptions. Like if there are revolutionaries, right, who hate liberalism and have all of this disdain, but they still make a lesser of two evils calculation and say like, well, at least the Dems respect my trans comrades or something. Let them vote for those reasons, but I don't think that's the same as like we don't, or the Dems, whatever, we don't need to soften the image of some of these more toxic ideologies. And I do think that happens. And I think like part of the conversation is just people are assessing a different threat level from some of these people, or rather these ideologies. So I think like someone like Pisco and Econoboy maybe like aren't as jaded by some of the crazy leftists. They don't see it as the same level of threat as maybe Whick does, or even you do, Hutch. So I don't think Pisco is trying to cape for evil communists. I don't think Econoboy is an evil communist. But there just have to be ways to accept these people as part of the coalition if that's how they vote, without accepting their ideological demands.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. This was the exact conversation I was having with Erudite, and I thought she made some really compelling arguments. And for me, the point of the conversation has not been necessarily to highlight ideological differences. Like, I don't know if ideology really matters all that much right now, up to a certain extent. Like, I think once you get into like actual Marxist Leninists, people that are maybe accelerationists, then I do think we should actively chase those people out of the party. I think the mistake that Destiny was making in their conversation, and I watched a video or a snippet of a video that he posted the day before, and I don't know if he was just being hyperbolic in the moment, but he somebody in his chat asked him, do you make any distinctions between like sock Dems, Dem socks, and tankies? And he just said no. I think that is not accurate. I do think that there is like a pretty broad spectrum of leftism and a broad spectrum of like problematic sort of rhetoric that I might be willing to tolerate up to a certain point, or not necessarily push back aggressively for. But for like the Marxist Leninists, those people, I think we should actively make an effort to let normal people, for lack of a better word, we need to make an effort to let those people know that we have nothing to do with like Marxist Leninism.
My counter to that, because I largely agree with you. This is hard. Like we're going in the same direction. We're just a little off here. I worry. Well, I'll just give you an example. Yesterday, okay, I was talking to Anna and I was talking to Counterpoints and things, and we were discussing communism, etc. And people started spamming my chat, right? Turn into Live and Learn. Turn into Live and Learn.
I know where this is going.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, let's check it out. And Boy, and look, I found it funny. I thought it was amusing. It was a good troll, okay? I said it at the time. Not everyone agreed with me. Anna was very upset. There was a lot of people who were very upset. And while, yes, there are substantive differences between Dem, Sock, Dem, Marxist, Leninists, they are not all the same. The argument would be they all kind of lead down the same path, and that is not a path we want to go down, because it
wait, hold on, let me cut you off here, because what he was doing was an obvious joke. I
agree.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, for the I did see some people freaking out about that, and to Anna's perspective, I'm sympathetic to her perspective, especially in the situation that she's in right now, and then also with the history of the country. I'm not going to tell her that that's not valid or whatever. But my understanding was he was directly parodying a meme that I think like Destiny's community made, where they said like next week's Live and Learn, and it was a 4-panel, and instead of me, it was Straighter Aid, and then it was Econoboy dressed up like Mao or whatever. Yeah. And I think he was directly referencing that. And so anybody who took that to mean that he was endorsing tanky shit, I think they're either wildly misinformed about who Econoboy is, or they're just acting in bad faith.
I don't think even Anna thought that. Just real quick, I don't think even Anna thought that, but what Anna,
some people did. I saw some people that were like, he's glamorizing it, and they were taking it seriously.
But what Anna said, and the reason why it offended Anna, and I don't want to speak for her too much or put words in her mouth, but she did ask a good question. Like, if I had been accused of being a fascist enabler, if people came to me and was like, Whick, I think you're enabling fascism. I think you're you go too easy on Nazis. You're cozying up with Nazis. You got a lot of Nazis in your chat. What are you doing, man? Like, this is a concern. We're concerned that you're facilitating these guys. And then the next week, I show up in my Hitler costume with my little SS pin with a Nazi flag in the background instead of my American background. Like, how would people view that? Would it be taken well?
I've thought about this. Intuitively, these things don't feel the same. I understand the arguments, 50 million people died under Mao and, 50 million under Stalin. I get all that, but I haven't really had enough time to really formulate an argument. Intuitively, it feels like people have more space to play with communist iconography to make jokes than Hitler. But even with like Hitler, you have movies like Jojo Rabbit where he wasn't glamorizing Hitler, obviously.
Yes, but hold on. But Whick made the critical point. So again, Pisco was I say this all because I like Pisco. I'm not trying to like bag on him, but I was watching him talk about it today. And he's saying like people joke about Hitler all the time. There is, to make fun of Hitler. Sure, not done by people who are declared fascists, right? It's like what Whick said. If someone is being accused, or if someone says like, yeah, I'm a fascist, but I don't believe in the Nazi stuff, right? I want to get there only through, I don't know, democratic means. I know that sounds silly, but people would say it sounds silly to say the same thing about socialism.
But Econoboy never said he was a Maoist or a communist.
He said he was a socialist, and he had the sure. But again, the point. And by the way, hold on. Let me.
I'm a liberal.
I wasn't offended by the joke. I think it was funny, especially because he went all in, right? Like he had the outfit, he had the flag, he had the ringtone. Very funny, an effective troll. The reason that some people like Ukrainian Anna are upset, or again, is because it's not like he's doing this to mock socialism. And I don't think so. I think, like Pisco said, he's trying to mock the people who are calling him, a closeted Marxist Leninist and all of this stuff, but he's not trying to mock socialism. And so I think that's maybe the.
I have a question. I don't know. Maybe you don't, Hutch. What was Econoboy's take on the Elon salute? Did you find it funny? Was it a good troll?
Was Elon even trolling? Are we calling that a troll?
I mean, do you think Elon's a literal Nazi?
I think in that moment, his instinct was to do, he can call it a Roman salute or whatever, but I do think he was feeling quite fashy in that moment. I don't think he was trying to parody Hitler. I don't know if we can compare this to what Econoboy was doing. The point I'm trying to make is like socialism as a concept predates Marx. I mean, we're talking about a concept that is, very loosely, it's about just striving towards a more egalitarian future. If you ask Econoboy about his particular version of socialism, he's not describing the dystopian nightmare that you would find coming from out of like Marxist Leninists or people that glorify people like Mao or Che Guevara or whatever. So
there
it's just
people, well, this is also goes to just the stigma against communism and socialism is not as strong as the stigma against fascism and Nazism. And you could say for good reason, and I'm willing to agree up until a certain point, but this is just people like perceiving these threats differently. I mean, I don't agree that socialism at its core is just like wanting to move towards more egalitarianism. I think like that is a bit of whitewashing.
That is a weird version of socialism. That's like, I'm a Nazi, but we're egalitarian Nazis.
Oh, well, that was what I was trying
to
say.
We're liberal Nazis.
There are
okay?
Hold on.
There
are literally self-described fascists right now who are making very soft pitches basically to the public, to their niche little corners of the internet, and talking about how they don't hate different races and they don't hate this and they want these to be voluntary separations and all of this stuff. And so there are ways to soften ugly ideologies. The
But
problem
that's
is
not what.
people,
But that's not
especially
what he
on the
kind of.
left in America.
But that's not what he kind of boy's
That's not
doing.
I don't
he's-
think he's
that's not
doing it
his-
intentionally.
I
No, I agree with you.
I
He's not
agree
doing it
I don't even.
intentionally.
I don't even think he's doing it unintentionally. Like
Okay.
like if I've spent a lot of time talking to Econoboy about this, and I do not have any sense whatsoever that he is unintentionally or intentionally trying to launder a kind of authoritarian socialist state.
He
Like
doesn't have to do it.
He had an economist on his podcast on his channel yesterday, and they were talking about what they described as liberal socialism. So it's obvious
Sure.
that he's a like a reformist, and he's not a tanky.
Okay, I will just say this, and then we can kind of like move on. Liberal socialism is an oxymoron. Socialism is an enemy of liberalism. You cannot have the two the same. They are at odds.
I agree
it's like
I
oil
agree
and
at
water.
face value. I agree maybe at face value, but I was interested enough to listen to the conversation and just hear them out. And what I was hearing was nothing like the kind of socialism that Mike from PA is pushing.
Of course, yeah.
so
And I'm not
I
trying
just-
to. I'm not
yeah.
trying to put Econoboy in the same bucket as Mike from PA. I am saying that there is a danger in mischaracterizing what socialism is, even with good intentions, right? Liberalism cannot survive in a socialist government, but socialism can survive in a liberal government, and that's the main difference. I think it would be, liberalism just cannot survive a socialist government. But
we should bring on Econoboy, and I can't really.
Yeah, I
don't
know. I do.
enough
That's
about
why I
it,
said
so-
I want to move on, because you're not here to answer for Econoboy, right? We'll have him on Thursday actually, and that'll be a fun conversation. I do want to talk.
I don't attribute malice
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
Though. And
We're
I
not
don't
here
think Wick
to
does either.
say he's a bad guy, right? We like Econoboy, but I guess I would ask you, given that you have this idea where Marxist Leninists, illiberal people should be shunned and things like that, especially, what are you doing, or what do you think we should do? How do we make liberalism cool again? First of all, are you a liberal? Yeah,
of course.
So how do we make it cool again? Because liberal is being used as a slur from the right and the left, basically. So how do we make it cool again? Like, how can we promote liberalism?
I think that in the tell me if you guys agree, because I've just been cooking up this theory, but I think in the modern era in social media, things like dunks are kind of like a currency. I don't think we're going to be successful at convincing people that liberalism is fucking dope by, being super polite and being like very conciliatory in our conversations. It goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, where I think we need to be more aggressive and more assertive and more confrontational. So I in my mind, I think like the best way that we can start to chip away at their currency, like the black pill lefty media space, is by, not to mince words, but just like making them look silly. And I feel like you can do that without it being like super mean spirited. You don't need to take like personal swipes at people or comment on their appearance or things in their past, things like that. But, I think that you can be very, very direct about the criticisms.
Who's doing
and
this
I think
well? Like, can you give me an example of someone who you think is doing this well in the space? Like who mocks or who is aggressive towards the people that you would call I think the term you use is black pill leftists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like the obvious name that comes to mind is we would talk about Destiny. The problem with Destiny, I think you agree, I think, is he gets in his own way a lot of the times by just being too edgy. I think if he regulated himself a bit more, I think he would have more effective reach.
We've had whole discussions on that. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
He goes too far with it, far too far. But
there's not a lot of big creators that are doing this. So the liberal creators, they do have pretty massive platforms. So it's not just that the left of center media space is just dominated by the black pill lefties. You have people like Brian Tyler Cohen and David Pakman and Adam Mockler and these now young Zoomers like Luke Beasley and Harry Sisson and the other people. We do have like champions out there that are just fighting for liberalism. But a lot of those people, the liberal content creators, the big ones, they're not in the trenches sparring with people like Cenk. Pod Save America, they're like hosting Hassan they're I don't think so. No, I think that's a big mistake that they're doing that. And, I think it will blow up in their face eventually. At some point, that mob is going to put them in their crosshairs and they're going to experience people experience.
Sorry, maybe you misunderstood or maybe I miscommunicated. Should these big liberal content creators that you mentioned be fighting against the Hassans, etc.?
Not necessarily. Like, I don't think that everybody for their own content strategy should be obligated to dedicate a percentage of their time to it. Can be 0%. There's a place for people like Brian Tyler Cohen and Josiah and Pondering. But we need other people. We need other people to step up and confront these people.
One of the I interrupt a lot and I apologize, but I don't want to forget this because I think it's important. One of my disagreements here, I guess I'll illustrate it this way. When you have someone who is a right-winger, a MAGA guy, a Trump voter, okay, and they're an influencer, and they're asked about, hey, or it comes up that, hey, what do you think of the Epstein files and Trump's handling of those? And then they are like, well, you know what? I'll let other people talk about that. I don't think I have to talk about that because there's so much that the Dems are doing that we need to talk about. We see that as dodging, right? We see that as, oh, you're just running cover, buddy, right? You don't actually take this seriously, or you think it's based, or at least you're okay with it. One of my worries when people and I've fought with this on Josiah before. Me and Josiah have gone the rounds, right? Before he blew up even, and he was just a regular Whick panelist. I think that when you refuse to kind of address the Hassans, the micro PAs, the crystal balls, Gaia Kolinsky, it looks like you're running cover for it. It's probably not true, right? And I don't think you're doing it intentionally, but just as if a Trump influencer would refuse to ever talk about the Epstein files, even though that's a big thing, it looks sus when you have liberal content creators refusing to address kind of the I won't even say the elephant in the room, but the weirdo in the corner who's like peeing on the wall, right? Does this make sense?
I disagree. I mean, I think where I would agree with you would be if you're sharing a platform with them, if you're on the same podcast or on the same panel as them, and you're directly confronted with their rhetoric, their Dems bad rhetoric. I think in that moment, I do think you have a responsibility if you're going to try to champion liberalism or, fight for the Democratic Party against or fight against bad faith critique, then I do think you have a responsibility to say something. But every creator, their brand is going to be totally different. People have different brand strategies. This is a career on top of this isn't just activism. Like, this is people's careers. And I think there's so many different creators that we don't need everyone to be an everything bagel. Like, you can fulfill a particular niche and there's nothing really morally wrong with that.
I don't think I agree, but I disagree, and I'll tell you why. I'll explain the difference here. I agree that the type of content I do, the type of content you do, the type of content Josiah, Pisco, all these, they can be substantively different. But I would disagree with you that I do think that, okay, let me put it this way. Regardless of whether it's true or not, there is a public perception amongst a lot of people in America that the Democrats are farther left than they actually are, especially on social issues. Would you agree with this? That is the perception, right?
Yeah.
And one of the ways that in Republicans and the MAGA this has been very successful for them. They have used this strategy very, very well, is they will nut pick. And what I mean by nut pick is they will pick the nutty people on the left, right? And they will platform them and push them and say, look at the nuts on the left. Look how crazy they are.
The libs of TikTok strategy.
Yes, this is the standard Democrat, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do think that every single liberal content creator, regardless of whether it's good for their brand, because frankly, I don't give a shit whether they make more money or less money. I give a shit about winning elections. I do think that they have some obligation to address it a little.
I mean, hang on. You care about making money.
I do care about making money.
Yeah, so you're no better than them. Come on now.
Hold on, that's not true, right? Because while I can care about making money, I would be willing to take a pay cut if it meant the Democrats won. Not all of it, obviously, but if I made 10% less and the Democrats won, I would take that cut.
Would you switch to Brian Tyler Cohen's strategy if it meant 10xing your income? You're thinking about it, and that's the point. That's the point I'm making here. So there's nothing immoral about that. And as long as we have other voices that are stepping up to fill that space, you know, it just depends on the kind of audience that you're cultivating. You might have cultivated an audience that wants to focus on MAGA. They don't want to talk about Cenk. They're just not interested in that. And so if you're serving that content to your audience, you're still doing a net good. You're still raising awareness of the myriad ways that Trump is, you know, hurting the country or whatever. And you're not entertaining this other conversation about like lefty infighting. So to me, I just don't see an inherent problem with that. I don't think everyone is obligated to adopt the same formula. Like we're not a unified front in that way. Everybody has their own platform. Everybody has their own career. Everyone has their own strategy. And
I don't disagree that we have to have the exact same formula, but I do think it has to be addressed into different degrees, and how you address it, that's up to you. But and I would posit that it's just true that the main reason that the Democrats have trouble in America when they do is because of this false sense of reality that they have, that Democrats are at least okay with the leftists, okay? I think that it behooves us, if we want to win, to change that dynamic, to change that paradigm or that viewpoint that many have. And one of the best ways to do that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, is by actively coming out against it. Are you familiar with Staxiums, if you're watching, this one's for you. Do you know what the Sister Soldier moment was? Okay. Clinton. We're going to go all the way back here in the 90s, okay? He was having a trouble, right? A lot of people saw him as cozying up with, black activists at the time, black separatist activists and things like that. He was seen as, the Republicans tried to paint him as very, very far left, but it didn't work. And one of the ways it didn't work is because he went to the Rainbow Coalition, right? So he went to a very leftist kind of, I think Al Sharpton was there and all the big leaders at the time, right? And he went to the dinner that they had. And at the time, there was a rapper named Sister Soldier who had made some very disparaging comments about white people. She was a nobody. No one really knew her, right? But he used that ability, and it is a Sister Soldier moment, because he went up, stood up at the dinner, and basically called her out, excoriated her, and said, "This is not who we are. I don't want anything to do with your anti-white rhetoric." It's not the words he used, right? But he made it very clear that he was not them. And this made it very, very hard for the Republicans to paint him as this far lefty loon. It was super, super successful. What we need in the current Democratic Party is our own Sister Soldier moments. We need to separate ourselves, right, in a very public, in a very loud way. So I disagree also with Tali. I think, well, maybe Tali didn't say this. Maybe it was you, right? But they're like, oh, politicians shouldn't go hard against the leftists. They should be more composed. I don't know if that's true. I think maybe if we saw some real passionate anger from Slotkin against Crystal Ball, that might have actually done us some real good. But I could be wrong on that. But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. I think this is a very flawed way of looking at it, because you're talking about the president of the United States. He wasn't president at the time. He was running for office. Right. Sorry. You're talking about the leader of the party. You're talking about the leader of a political party. There's going to be so much more put on that person to account for. As you know, a president, the running for president is no small thing. You have to appeal to literally like hundreds of like different groups that have real political power at the local level and the state level. And so in that kind of a situation, you can make a stronger argument that he needed to take a firm stance in that position. When we're talking, I guess the way that I look at it is kind of like the way I look at like protectionist trade policy versus like free market trade, like international trade agreements and things like that. There are certain things that other creators are going to do better than me. Like I can't do what Josiah does. Like he's really heavy into the like granular stories. He can get into the details about every single story. Like I just don't work that way. And so because he's really good in that role, I don't see a problem with him just fully leaning into that and just doing that 100%. I think I'm much better at these days about attacking these ideas, identifying the problems and doing that. And so that's what I choose to do because I feel like I'm good in that role. I'm good at it. I enjoy it. I'm getting better at it. And so I just think there's a variety of different roles that we can all play, and we don't need to have everybody as a bulldog. You know, we have people like AOC in the Congress, and then we have, you know, people that are like much more subdued, and those people appeal to their constituents. So yeah, you know, this does seem to be a
Go ahead, Tali.
Well, that was a good way to win us over by invoking the free market. That you prefer a market-based
like that?
approach to content creation.
Yeah.
I love that. That was good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I actually agree. I agree, and this is what Connor says a lot. Like he endorses a plurality of approaches, basically. So, and it's going to depend on what your skills are. I think, like you're saying, Hutch, because we also have all seen someone like try to do something outside of their skill set, and it's very cringe and it flops. So I do think people need to lean into what their rhetorical skills are. But I guess there were a few things in the chat that stuck out to me of like going back to, I guess, Wick's question of how can we make liberalism sexy again? How can we revive liberalism? And someone, I think it was Duncan, who said by acknowledging its excesses, right, and actually dealing with that. And I think it was Joe. I already lost it now in the chat, but something by like be the common sense party and acknowledge the hypocrisy and all of this stuff. And I think maybe that's where I've seen a lot of liberals fail, and I'm more inclined to what Wick is saying. So you make a good point, Hutch, that it's like that was a presidential election, and so the things that the people he needed to appeal to and his pressures were different than, let's say, the average lefty comment creator,
wildly
whatever,
different,
content
like
creator.
totally different universes of expectations.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I don't think that every left-wing content creator, needs to carry this on their back. But I do agree with Wick, again, as someone who's a disaffected liberal, but who didn't throw away liberalism, who still really wants to see liberalism maintained. I am frustrated with what I see as, I wish there was more of the Sister Soldier moments, right? Just the pushing back on this stuff. And there are ways to do this in I would say maybe like frame it as negative and positive. Negative being like take away from someone else, criticize someone else, call out these things, right? Try to separate yourself. Or as the positive could be leading by example, meaning like allow a plurality of viewpoints, right? Like, leaning into the things that we actually want to see, or that actually separate the true liberals from the illiberal left and right. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like tearing others down, but like proactively leading on being an open-minded, open to debate, pluralistic space in the true sense.
But even in what you're describing, you could break it down to, you pointed to the excesses of liberalism, or what you would call the excesses of liberalism, and I'm sure you could find dozens of examples of things that you view to be excesses. And in this instance,
the left, but this is different, right?
Yeah.
Like
Duncan, I was quoting Duncan from the chat, and he said a way to preserve liberalism is to call out its excesses. And yeah, I agree. I think it's the excesses of the left is probably the sharper way. Probably the sharper way that I would want to deliver that message.
Yeah.
But I do think liberals failed and got in many ways some failed to distinguish themselves, I think a lot of constitutionally liberal people fell into a lot of illiberal practices and ways of engaging, and I think that's a problem.
Well, I think we're in a moment right now. I think there is I think there's a demand out there right now for an alternative to the black pill stuff, and
Absolutely.
that I feel like that demand is growing, and this is the internet, right? So if there's a demand for something that's growing, people are going to come in and fill those demands. Like I think you are going to see more creators come up and find an audience and grow an audience, pushing back against this stuff. when you're talking about like you were saying the excesses of the left, but even in that case, you know, you could probably think of like dozens of different what you might call excesses of the left. And one creator might be drawn to one particular part of that because maybe it's in a field they specialize in, they have a lot of experience in, and so they're just naturally kind of guided in that direction, and they can talk about that one particular thing like really well. They can defend that argument against like 7 different other arguments, and then another person can do the same for a different thing. So I'm making the case that it's like free trade. Like
But
we go to we go to Central America because they're really good at growing bananas.
I get
we're
you,
not
but
very good at growing bananas.
let me-
right? So,
just real quick.
let me just
Tali,
say something really quick.
because I'll forget this if I don't. I'm sorry. But even in
okay, I
those
love the
cases
really quick
where
battle.
someone is super good at attacking the left, you would still say that, hey, you do need to mention Trump is worse. Trump is bad. There are things MAGA is doing that's destroying the country. Even if your talent is in one direction, like you still need to kind of keep a through line here, right? Even if it's not your forte.
I think that's going to happen organically, though. I think those people that would do that, it's going to be a Venn diagram of a perfect circle of people that have these criticisms of like lefties or whatever. But they're also, I mean, I talk about Trump every fucking day, so it's just a natural kind of outcome. I really doubt you're going to find very many creators who like literally exclusively focus on that, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's another problem in the culture, I think, and this isn't a creator problem. I think it's a culture problem. Is anytime you do criticize the left, they're saying, "Oh, you're running cover for MAGA," and I hate that. I hate that so much. It's like, why are you talking about what Hassans doing when right now we have Trump destroying the Constitution? And
it's silliness. I just ignore it. It's
Both sides.
No, hold on.
The...
That's a mistake to ignore it. That's a mistake. I know, like, I ignored it in my chat personally, but I don't think we should ignore, like, the overall implications of this, right? Because it's a bad faith criticism, so that's why I don't want to entertain it.
Fair. It's just silly. Like, it's such a nonsensical thing that you can't effectively, convey the stakes of Trump and the threats that he represents. You can't do that effectively while if you critique Hassan, like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just pure silliness. So I don't know. I feel like the little kiddies are saying that. I feel like that's like the youngsters that are just repeating what he says. And
well, to be fair, I think both sides of the intra-left fighting are accusing the other of doing just that, right? The lefties say, you're ignoring, MAGA and punching left instead, and the moderates or actual liberals are saying, by only attacking Democrats, you guys are whitewashing the Trump administration. So I think both sides of this fight kind of lobby that, or
well, let me try to attack it from a different perspective. Okay, like let's bring in a whole new consideration. One of the consequences of confronting these people are you are going to get inundated with all kinds of crazy, toxic, vitriolic, nasty, cruel interactions online. Their audiences do brigade the shit out of people that they don't like. They smear them, they slander them. They will not hesitate to lie and accuse you of something ridiculous or monstrous. Like, I've been told, oh, you literally get pleasure from watching Palestinians die. Like, it gets like the rhetoric gets that intense. And so
yeah,
I don't think that we should put it on every creator to be open to that kind of torrent of abuse. I don't think that we should call them cowardly by just not wanting to deal with any of that. I don't think people should be expected to just welcome that shit. I mean, I've been on the internet for 15 years, so it doesn't bother me like it did in the beginning. I'm able to let a lot of it go. But for someone who is maybe new in the space, to ask them to confront these people is to expect them to just shoulder all of that stuff. And the personal toll that takes on someone can be really nasty. And I just don't, quite frankly, I just don't begrudge people who don't want to even swim in that space.
I understand why they don't. I get you. Because, yeah, obviously, what you say is just true. I do think that we should, I don't think we should call them cowards, but I do think that we should have like an expectation. If you're going to be a political streamer, if you're going to be someone in the political space, and if you're a liberal, okay, and if you want the Democrats and liberalism overall to succeed, and let's be clear, chat, right? If you're a liberal, Tali, I don't know why you did this. Like, why are you voting for MAGA? MAGA is Maoism. It really is. In a very real way. Like, there is no liberalism on that side of the aisle anymore. They are very illiberal.
I agree.
The only hope for
I agree.
liberals in the future is the Democratic Party, at least right now. Aren't
you guys encouraged by what you're seeing?
What do you mean?
By the way, I mean, when I look at the Democratic,
what are we seeing?
Well, when I look at the Democratic Party,
like the Texas shit, hell yes.
That on top of obviously like Pete and Gavin Newsom and I've seen several prominent Democrats that are moderating rhetorically on a number of issues.
Absolutely. I think even AOC is moderating on some issues too, which the left doesn't.
She's been doing that. Yeah. Well, I think AOC was never truly as ideologically captured as her supporters wanted her to be. It was a time where like taking on these labels was a little less serious. I think it was like these labels were more vibes based, not necessarily rooted in like praxis or, you know, like the long teachings of Karl Marx. So I don't know that she was ever as extreme as people want to paint her out to be. But I am heartened by moderate Dems moderating their message, and they are talking about some of the excesses of the left. They're picking only the most extreme issues, and I think it goes beyond that. But yes, I
do think that's fine.
I think eventually she's gonna just fully cut ties with DSA. I think she's kind of working up to that movement.
Excellent.
Because the last interaction they had, they went after her so viciously over such a fucking superficial, stupid amendment that Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced. It was so inconsequential, and yet they were treating it as though she personally like packaged a bomb and sent it to Israel over just nothing. And what I saw from her, I was like, ooh, I like that. Cause she pushed back. She was just like, she was assertive. She defended herself. She was assertive, and she was very kind of straightforward. Like, this is fucking ridiculous what you guys are doing to me. And I don't know if you guys have seen, but there was video of her being chased out of a movie theater like a year ago.
Yeah.
People were, screaming at her, telling her like, you never called it a genocide, which she did. She already had called it a genocide at that point. But yeah, I'm so like, I feel like she's working up to the moment, especially if she is going to be going for national office. I do think eventually she's just going to be like, you know what? You guys are way too toxic. But anyways, I mean, just the general direction of the Democratic Party right now, for me, I'm fucking super encouraged.
Who's your favorite example of a Democrat doing it right? A politician I'm talking about. A politician.
Honestly,
politician
right now,
right.
Gavin Newsom. Right now, Gavin Newsom is look, he's I don't know if he has national appeal. I'm not predicting that he's going to win the primary, but I'm just saying, like, he is fighting. Like, him and California, we are fighting this Trump administration. We are suing them like several times in federal courts, sometimes successfully stifling his agenda. We are doing this aggressive gerrymander in California to counteract the Texas legislature. He is like rhetorically being like really sharp and biting against this administration right now. So he's definitely appealing to the base right now. The base is screaming for that kind of fight. I don't know how much appeal he has with independents, because he fully leans into it's just so obvious that this guy hates Republicans.
Yeah.
Like Gavin Newsom fucking with the fire of 1,000 suns just hates Republicans. He speaks down about them. He'll talk shit about like Mississippi and shit, which is good for like Democratic voters, but I'm not sure.
I'll say this about Newsom. I do like some of the, as you mentioned, some of the things he's doing, but I would not want Newsom be at the top of the ticket, partly because what you mentioned, but also partly because the dude looks like he wears a skin suit. I don't know. I don't trust the man. I will point to someone, and I keep harping on this.
Trust that he will fight Republicans, and that's the point, though.
I think he will do whatever is in his interest to do to win the primary. I think that's what.
If he's killed a sex worker or two in his past, it is what it is. I'd rather not know, but I do know that he's gonna. That's obviously a joke, but I'm just saying. I do know that like he is using the political mechanisms right now to actually like do stuff. Like the Texas legislature is another really good example of that. Pritzker like helping them. I don't know if they have like an underground railroad in Illinois right now, and they're like fucking moving them around. But we are seeing like clearly these politicians have all seen the polls where it's like 80% of Democratic voters are super not satisfied with leadership and want to see more fight.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they've seen those polls, and obviously they're reacting to it. It's just I think it's up to people in media to actually give them their flowers when they're doing that. Because when you tune into like Cenk and I don't want to be unfair to Kyle because I think he made a video about the Gavin Newsom thing, but you know, I think they're more hesitant to give Democrats credit when they do good things. And right now they're doing good things. Yeah.
Like I would point to someone, and I am a shill for him. I will be real. He holds my governor, Josh Shapiro. Okay. Do you know he's also suing the Trump administration? Have you heard about that? Right. Over farmland. And things
I
like
did,
that?
but I don't know what the particular suit was. I mean,
like he is doing the fighting, but he is also not. It's not clear he hates Republicans with the fiery thousand suns, right? He has in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state, right? He has broad bipartisan appeal, right? He is someone that I think that if we want a clear W in 2028, he is obviously our leader. But my worry, my concern is that the far left is going to try to keep him from it, right? Because he is not a leftist in any way, shape, or form, right? He's very not even aesthetically.
I mean, that fight is coming, you know, that like we all know that's going to be a fight. 2028 is going to be, dude, I think 2028 is going to be nuts because these people really feel like they were robbed in 2016 and 2020. Yep. They really feel like it was stolen from them and like they deserve it. It's their turn this time. And then you put that on top of the Israel Gaza stuff, which I think has been such a lightning rod in those spaces. Well, it's going to create. They have
an incredible arrogance, and it's not exclusive to the far left. I have to put this asterisk in all the time. I'm not trying to, to sweep for the right, but the far left broadly have this arrogance where they believe like if only the poor uneducated masses just had exposure to our ideas, they're obviously the better, more virtuous, we have all of the winning ideas. We are the better people and the smarter people. So if we just let everyone else, learn, if they would just allow themselves to be educated by us, they would all agree and we'd all be on our merry way. And I think people like you make strong arguments that this is not true, that oftentimes the
it's just
more
not
radicals on both sides, if anything. Yeah.
It's not policy alone. Like I think they think that policy alone will just secure them. If we could just get Medicare for all, we would have permanent supermajorities in the Congress moving forward. And I think the lesson of modern politics, we keep getting taught this lesson over and over and over again, is that it's not that policy doesn't matter, but there are some things that people prioritize just above policy. And a lot of it has to do with macroeconomic conditions, and then like the culture war issues, political identity. I think people are now associating the political party that they belong to more. I think it means more now to call yourself like a Republican or a Democrat than it did in 1950, where there was just way more bipartisan cooperation in the Congress between the parties. And now I think people have made conservative or liberal or leftist a bigger part of their identity, and I think social media is a big contributing factor because people are just
I think that's bad for us as people. Like one of the things I resisted this for so long. I guess you have to as a content creator to a certain extent, but I hate calling myself I'm an X. I like to say I support Democrats, I support liberalism, I support liberals, right? And I do that because when you start calling yourself X, like I'm a feminist or I'm a Democrat or I'm a whatever, it makes it hard for you to objectively look at this. But this is me fighting against a tide that I just can't win, right? So I have leaned in now, and I think we need people who are proud to say I'm a hard R liberal. Okay, I'm a hard R liberal. You can use it as a slur if you want, but that's what I am. So I get what you're saying about people like the politics of today are much different than the politics of the 50s, and people treat it differently. I do think that that's a shame, though. I think that that's bad. It's hurt us as a nation. But
I wanna I want to expand from that because I completely agree. And, there's some psychological research that I'm going to butcher now, but just long short of it, it says what you say, Wick, right? Like the closer that we keep these identity labels to the core of our identity, the more vulnerable we are for some psychological attack if these things are challenged. And the more people double down. And I do think that explains a lot of what I would call the doubling down and the negative polarization coming in both sides of our politics, where we're going to do maybe a really extreme thing to own the other side, or just to show how different we are from those terrible people over there who want to ruin the country and ruin your families and ruin your communities. And both sides employ this. And I do think it's an issue, but in reflecting on my own vote and trying to really assess within myself, why did I vote for Trump when it's not that I support Trump policies. It's not that I've ever been MAGA or anything like this. And I don't consider myself a Republican. And really, everything I'm about to say is up for lots of criticism. I think it would be fair criticism. But when I try to reflect honestly, it was just a very self-involved process of trying to figure out my political identity and my political team. And it was me quitting my team as how I felt it. And that is arguably, immature and self-centered, and I'm willing to take all of those criticisms. But it wasn't a affinity for Trump or the illiberalism of the right that brought me over. It was feeling just really dissatisfied by my team and trying to reckon with what my political or ideological identity is. So I think that's true and also sort of malleable, so that we are in a state of flux. If you look at people who, the Joe Rogans and the Theo Vaughns who were sort of, this is the one thing that Hassan got right. I think these people are largely apolitical, and they were kind of just taken aboard team right. And I think that applies to a lot of not necessarily conservative people who are sort of on the Trump train right now. But to Wick said at the end there of I don't think this is good. I completely agree. I don't think it's good. And I find myself lately running two analyses on these things, is what is going to be more effective electorally and what is right. And so I have a hard time shouting down the people who are doing things that I think are morally wrong if it's going to be electorally, or if they're correct about the numbers, basically. So for example, with Cenk, I despise Cenk's project. I see him as my ideological opposite in many ways. When I draw my horseshoe theory, I see myself as down here at the center and Cenk up in the horseshoe extreme. But I think he's right that a left and right populism is a huge animating force right now, and that maybe Dems would be successful electorally with a left-wing populist candidate. Now, I hope it doesn't go that way. Again, I think this would be an affront to liberalism, and that being sort of my core tenet here that I'm trying to ground myself to. I don't want it to go that way. But what if that's accurate? And let me just make one more point about this. Even with the shitting on Republicans, it's I want people to stop shitting on Republicans, not because I think it's going to hurt them electorally, although I hope it will because I think it's wrong, but because I think it's wrong, because I want to take down the temperature, because I don't think Republicans are evil, all of these various reasons. But what if it is effective to just shit on Republicans? That is the winning strategy. And yeah, go ahead.
I brought up hyperpolarization being a big problem, but I just want to be excuse me. I just want to be clear that I am definitely hyperpolarized right now. So I'm not above it. So I'm very much partisan in one direction. And I think both things can be true at the same time, where it is bad that the country has gotten hyperpolarized. And a really interesting way to demonstrate this was, I don't know if you guys remember a movie called Civil War that came out last year, directed by Alex Garland.
Movie. Yeah, but yeah.
Phenomenal movie. Came out with another movie this year called Warfare, was also really good. But Civil War last year was this premise that he kept kind of vague in terms of what were the actual politics of that movie. So for example, in the movie, there were I think 3 or 4 different kind of federations that were existing, and you had the DC Federation, which was very fash, and Nick Offerman's character was just like a fascist, and then you had one of the alliances was the Texas California Federation in the movie, And one of the criticisms that, a big criticism that movie got was that people felt like he wasn't taking a side, and people laughed at the idea of California Texas Federation. But the point of the movie was not to say this side or that side is better. The point of the movie was hyperpolarization. And the very fact to highlight, like, this is the negative consequence of hyperpolarization. And one of the ways that he was able to illustrate that was through this plot device with California and Texas, because people were like, that would never happen in real life. But that was the point of the movie. The fact that we can't even conceive of a California-Texas alliance in a Civil War type setting is the very problem that he was alluding to in that film. But I think that you can say that hyperpolarization is bad on the one hand. And I also think, and this is where I'm going to like be a little bit more assertive here. Like, I do think like you got to pick a fucking side right now. Like, you got to pick a fucking side.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to people that feel confused about stuff, but at a certain point, you know, there are very clear lines that are being drawn right now. And like, for example, I was a registered independent until 2016. You know, I was that guy that was doing the whole both sides of the same coin type stuff. And then as soon as 2016 came along, I was like, okay, I'm just so clearly a Democrat right now. And I'm not saying you have to change your, you know, you can be a registered independent, that's fine. But I do think that we are in a situation where you have to pick a side.
I do agree.
That's my view on it.
I 100% agree with you that, again, as I said earlier, liberalism is under attack, and there's only one party right now that represents at least somewhat of a defense of liberalism. They're not perfect by any means. The question, I think that, and I think we largely even agree, me and you, Hutch, at least, but we do have some differences on how do we make sure that the Democrats win? Because at the end of the day, right, if you don't win, it does not matter, right? If you don't get enough votes to cross the threshold to get, again, in the system we live, doesn't matter. It does not matter whether you felt good shitting on those Republicans, whether it made you feel nice to invite the tankies in to your side, right? None of that matters. It really just comes down to what can we do? What is the messaging that is most effective? What are the policies that we can put forward that are best able to bring people over? Who should be the leader of our party right now? Should be the Democratic standard bearer, right? What kind of stance should they take on the various hot issues of the day? And I think that at the end of the day, like, this is what we're doing right now. We are fighting over those questions.
Yeah,
so I just want to make clear to the chat, like, me and Hutch, we're on the same side, at least, right? We want Democrats to win. It's just we may have different ideas of how that happens.
I think like ideologues right now, I think are just completely mismatched with the moment. So there are some people who think that, you know, they have these policy preferences that are, you know, let's say they're super progressive. You know, they believe in things like paid family. I'll just do the jank, like paid family leave and Medicare for all.
$15 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah, $15 or $20 an hour, whatever it is. Like, and they think that in their ideal system, every single Democrat serving in the Congress and if they're president would have that same like policy preference. But that's a mistake right now. Like, if a candidate in a purple district in Ohio it stands a better chance of winning on a more moderate platform, we should not be. This should not upset people. Like this, the very expectation that we're going to completely reform the Democratic Party and turn it into a monolith, I think betrays a total lack of understanding of what American politics are. It just doesn't work that way. And so for me, ideological differences don't really matter much right now. I don't really have like strong policy. I'm not even really thinking about policy right now. Which isn't to say that I'm not saying the policy doesn't matter, but I'm just saying like right now it takes a backseat to like, we need to moneyball the shit out of this, maximize the amount of seats that we pick up in 2026 so that we have a better chance of securing a trifecta in 2028.
Now,
That's just the simple math of it. And if that means fucking Joe Manchin in West Virginia or Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania or even John Fetterman, if his primary voters pick him, if he survives a primary, I don't know if he will, but if he does, then I'll obviously support him in Pennsylvania. You know, you mentioned Shapiro earlier, and
yes.
Did you read Abundance?
I did. I'm getting through it. Okay, I'm getting through it.
Just as a little sidetrack, there's a part in the book where they talk about how this bridge collapsed in Pennsylvania. I didn't know this. So it's like a major bridge collapsed in Pennsylvania.
I am familiar with this story because again, the infrastructure and stuff. But go ahead, tell the story, please.
You know, people, you know, the far left, maybe they don't like him because they consider him a moderate or whatever, but he did really good leadership. There was a major bridge that collapsed in, was it Philadelphia or one of the, I don't know if there's a water body in Philadelphia. I don't know where it was, but they got that bridge repaired, I think in like fucking 3 weeks. And normally a project that large would have taken like 2 years. You know, that's just an example of really good leadership. Like he empowered the people that were in charge of that reconstruction of the bridge. He gave them the tools that they needed. He invoked emergency authorities and fast-tracked certain processes, and so they were allowed to take risks that maybe they normally wouldn't have been able to in order to get these projects done quickly. And they were able to get that bridge fixed in like, I don't even think it was 3 weeks. I think it might have been, it was like 10 days to 3 weeks.
Very quickly. And he was, again, this is one of the reasons he has bipartisan support in Pennsylvania is because he's proven capable of actually governing. And this is much more important than what policies you hold. And I wish people would understand this. That's just
really good leadership. Yes. We should elevate that guy in our party to say, like, look, this is a guy who got the confidence of a lot of Republican voters, not because he was doing conservative policies, but because he was a good fucking leader. And it shouldn't matter if he's a center left or something like that.
No, I agree with you overall. Like, again, what will win in Virginia is not what will win in California. It's not what will win in New York City. I do think it's a mistake for all the Mamdani people to say, well, look at Mamdani, what he did. It was successful in New York City. We should just adopt that everywhere, and it's going to be successful. I think that's a misunderstanding of how politics works, a misunderstanding of what the voters want. New York City is not the same as Ohio, for example. It's very, very different. The people in those localities want very, very different things. And yes, purity testing on that is a mistake. But I say all that to ask you, Hutch, do you think that there should be any minimum standard we should hold a Democrat to? Like, I hear blue no matter who all the time. But would you vote for a Democrat, someone who's running on a Democrat who supports Trump? I wouldn't, right? So there's got to be some kind of minimum standards, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean by supports Trump? Like, what do you mean by that?
By saying, like, you know what? I think that Trump's doing a real good job on the economy, and I think he's great. Like, we shouldn't even look into the Epstein files, etc. Someone who just doesn't even vote for Democrats in caucus, like he calls himself a Democrat, but doesn't really vote.
I mean, we can entertain this hypothetical, but it just is not in practice. That doesn't really work that way. Like, I mean, like you have like people like Fetterman who will say, like, you know, actually his trade policy is kind of good, but I mean, Fetterman also voted with Democrats most of the time.
I'm not talking about someone who exists in real life. I'm asking you this I want to get to where you, like, what minimum standards should we have, if any, for Democrat politicians? What should our minimum standards be? Because I think we should have some, but I'm curious what you think those are.
I don't know. I'm pretty extreme with it, man. Like, you literally, if we reanimated the corpse of like Mao Zedong, and then he survived a primary in fucking New York, I would support him on the ticket. Like, I just, you know, I think the stakes are literally that big right now. But I realize I'm very, very extreme with it. So, like, I guess my standard is just like, if they survived the primary, if they advanced to the primary and they became the nominee, I don't know. I don't have to think about that. Like, if there was a Marxist Leninist, okay, hold on.
This is where we're going to have the substantive disagreement. Go ahead.
But here's the extreme hypothetical, right? Like, if electing this Marxist Leninist tanky for a seat in a district in New York was the difference in Democrats having the majority and not having the majority, I would support the Marxist Leninists for sure.
Don't know if I would, and I'll tell you why, right? Because I think
come on, but come on, the difference between having the majority and not having a majority, like the difference between
What if
actually
it's
getting
Hitler?
legislation done.
Okay, what if it was Hitler?
Did
you
they
would get
survive
the
a
majority.
primary?
He's like, we should kill all the Jews, but you know,
Yes.
oh, you'll get the majority.
Oh
clip.
boy.
Give me the clip. Give it to me. Do it.
I mean, I'm just really extreme about this. I'm gonna sneakily try to just dodge that question altogether, and I'll just say like I'm so extreme. Like if it is the difference between, you know, confirming 200 plus judges and, you know, passing federal legislation to get stuff done, then I'm very, very fucking extreme with this. But in terms of the people that we should court, as in like mouthpieces, you know, like who should we as content creators try to build bridges with, then I don't think we should be chasing Marxist Leninists. But if a Marxist Leninist, a full-on tanky, you know, survived a primary and that seat was the difference between a majority and not a majority, I would probably vote for the tanky for sure. Yeah.
I appreciate the honesty, but I'm going to tell you I think that when people say that they don't trust Democrats to actually believe in liberalism, this is what they'll point to. They'll say,
hang on. This is the most pure distillation of my belief in liberalism. Like, I think liberalism is so fucking important that I would entertain extreme candidates in extreme situations to be able to secure majorities. Like, I'm taking that support of liberalism to its most extreme hypothetical that you could possibly imagine.
I disagree. I think.
Well, then maybe you're pointing out.
I think that's betraying liberalism in order to gain power. And let me give you my argument here, right? One of the strengths of liberalism, by holding to liberal values, the core values, is that we can survive a non-liberal politician or two, right? We can, absolutely. But if we want people to trust us, to say, hey, there are steps that even if it would cost us an election, we will not do, right? Then we have to be able to, at the bare minimum, say, no, we wouldn't vote for Hitler if he was a Democrat. That's just a bare minimum. Because there are people who believe we are so power hungry that we'll steal elections, right?
The Hitler example is a bit extreme. It's difficult for me to imagine supporting Hitler in any situation. But I'm just saying.
It should be just an easily no. Like, it should be if someone asks you, did you rape a dog? You say no. You say no, okay? It's easy. It's an easy answer.
I mean, but I would vote to elect someone who raped a dog if that meant the difference between getting a majority and not a majority. Okay. You would have to explain to me why it would be a better outcome for Republicans to be able to block Democrats from doing, like, getting judges confirmed and doing legislation. And I just don't think you have a very strong argument. Like, yeah, it's bad that we have a dog raper in the caucus, but I'd rather be able to pass bills,
just
right?
I think let
me make the argument, and then I'll give it to you, Tali. So the difference here is short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. Short-term, we may take a couple losses, but I think long-term is better for the health of the party, whereas I think that your view here is going to get a short-term gain, but it's going to kill us long-term. It's going to make it almost impossible to win future elections.
We can just pull a Vladimir Putin and send the CIA to that person and take him up to like the 50th story of a... Yeah, there are other ways that we can deal with that problem behind the scenes, for sure.
I wasn't trying to gotcha here. I want to make that clear. I thought you were just saying, no, that's silly, and we'd move on, but I guess not. Tali, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, I think it's just like placing emphasis or prioritizing slightly different things. Although, Wick, you make a good point. You could frame it as a long-term versus short-term strategy. But, and again, so like, I guess I'm not as offended by Hutch's response, even though I disagree with it. But I think like this just speaks to our difference in priorities. And again, people could say that I have the worst priorities, and I would accept that. If the political power is sort of everything. And again, I really resent the people who talk in those terms, but there's a truth to it, right? If your top priority is keeping what you perceive to be the fascists out of government, then yeah, you would make those types of deals. You would make those types of exceptions to have political power. I think it's like a completely logical and reasonable position to take. But again, I'm more concerned with liberalism surviving, basically, and not being beaten down and broken apart by the more extremist factions. And I think part of maybe what Wick was getting at, maybe, a common critique of liberalism.
Inscrutable sometimes. It's hard to understand what I go through. I get it, right? But
a common critique of liberalism that has merit and needs to be dealt with, even if we don't have all the answers, is the paradox of the tolerance of intolerance, right? So, I mean, Hutch, you make this kind of like beautiful point of like actually choosing Hitler in this position is the ultimate expression of liberalism and sort of like openness to ideas and stuff. But then at what point do you allow, like at what point have you let in a toxic element? When do you tolerate intolerance to a point where you are no longer tolerated? And that is actually, by the way, that actually really gets at what we're seeing here. Huck. I keep mixing your two names together. Huck. You guys, or let me put it on you, Hutch. Hutch, to a portion of the left right now, you are intolerable. They do not wish to tolerate you.
I don't care.
I know, and that's good. And that's what I'm a big fan of yours. But I think this is part and parcel of the problem. The left has tolerated a lot of extremist freaks who are now the one doing the purity testing and trying to change the landscape from much less of a liberal one to much more of a just like an identitarian leftist one. And I think liberal values to me are more important.
Here, let me blow up both of your arguments right now. Let me just put this thing to rest. Okay.
Go full Hamas on them. Just destroy them.
This is ironclad. You are not going to escape this. And then once I put this out there,
to counter your Hamas,
you're going to be on my side 100%. Okay? Was it or was it not based that the United States allied with the Soviet Union to fight the fascists in Italy and Germany and Japan?
It was based, but
there you go.
The problem is, you know what we
did
exactly? You know what we did?
It's not
we didn't vote them in to lead our country.
It's not perfect.
We did
lock it up.
Hold on.
Lock
we
it
didn't
up.
let them dictate.
As Hutch would say, these are not analogous. Okay,
I don't think they are. I do think they are analogous. I really do.
So the reason, well, let me hold on. During World War II, the race to Berlin, right? We were competing directly against the Soviets to get to Berlin because we were allies, but we understood we were working at cross purposes. We were not letting them dictate our policies. We were not letting them dictate what we were trying to do. And that's why it's disanalogous, because if we were electing someone to be in the party, to have a say in what we did, right?
What
we basically said is we're not going to attack each other right now. That's different. That's different than voting them in. It's as Tali would say. That Hutch
the concept is very much the same. You know, just you're making temporary alliances with people that you might have extreme ideological differences to stop a fascist from basically taking over the world. And you know, if we're talking about one Marxist Leninist and a fucking like D60 seat in New York or something like that, I mean, I doubt they're going to have like a ton of sway in the Congress. And you know, I would be fine doing that if it meant getting the majority. That's just such an easy calculation to me. I know I'm not thinking about it in terms of like, it's going to make us look bad. And, you know, I wouldn't even worry about it because I'm sure there would be a lot of people in the party that would like very loudly push back against rhetoric that they thought was harmful or made the party look bad.
You'd think that, but
this kind of
just really quick, Charlie, because I got to address this. You'd think that, but one of the reasons the libs of TikTok strategy of nut picking is so successful is because we have a tendency, a knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, if the Republicans are attacking it, we got to defend it. If the Republicans say it's bad, we got to say it's good, right? Because we're hyper-polarized right now, as we've all acknowledged. So there would be a ton of blue people, right? A ton of Democrats, a ton of leftists, a ton of people saying, actually, we should hear this Hitler guy out because the Republicans are attacking him, and so he must not be that bad. That's what would happen in the real world. That's absolutely what happened.
I mean, look, I think the Democrats have done a pretty decent job of marginalizing the more kind of extremist stuff. Like Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman are fucking gone, bro. I mean, that was like, you know, they didn't survive 2 years past 2 years in Congress. You know,
we had AOC going to bat for Jamal Bowman. I agree that we kicked him out, and thank God, right? Because
didn't work. They lost by double digits. They got their clocks claimed by their.
However, we had a substantive
by the voters
of the left who went to bat for Jamal Bowman, and I don't want us in a situation where a substantive portion of the left is going to bat for Hitler, right? Even if he loses, I don't want that to happen.
We need to drop the Hitler analogy because now it's making it silly, right? Because now
now it's silly.
It is because you're right. Wick, it's a good way to like find the parameters and find the outer limit. But now if we want to like ground the conversation more in reality, and I say this because what I'm about to say, to compare it to Hitler would be so ridiculous, but arguably the success of the Squad and then that expanding out to the Cori Bushes and the Jamal Bowmans, that's arguably maybe what Wick was trying to talk about. If someone much less bad than Hitler, right, got in, and then it's like, oh, well, maybe this is where the energy is, guys. Like you see how easy it is for people to fall down that trap and for power to grow, even if it's a small coalition. And
This
by
hasn't
the
happened
way,
yet.
it is
It just
true that Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush got their asses kicked, and I'm grateful for that. But they got their asses kicked by the voters, and to Wick's point, not necessarily by their Democratic colleagues.
Well, they didn't make a lot of friends in Congress, and their jobs would have been easier getting reelected if they weren't just the way that they were. But they were pretty outrageous, and we've had the Squad kind of in the ranks for the last like 6 years. But honestly, I don't agree with every vote that Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar or even AOC has made. But when push came to shove, Pelosi did a really fucking good job of keeping that conference a pretty unified front. And so they played ball, like the Progressive Caucus and the Squad. I think there's like overlap there. I think they're all part of the Progressive Caucus, but they worked with liberals to stifle Trump's legislative agenda from 2019 to 2021. And they did work with the Biden administration to get a ton of legislation passed. And, that one of the reasons why Bowman and Cori Bush were not reelected is because their constituents were mad that they didn't vote for the fucking infrastructure bill.
Oh yeah.
People, like their own voters, were like, this is ridiculous. And then you had Cori Bush showing up at a fucking press event celebrating a local investment because of the infrastructure bill.
They want credit.
And then
for it,
she
but
got
they
asked the
didn't vote for
question,
it,
like,
yeah.
you didn't vote for it, so why are you here? It was ridiculous. Their own voters revolted because of that, and that's a good thing. But I'm just saying, these are all evidence that I don't think the party is. I don't think I think the perception that the party is like shooting way far to the left. That's just not happening
Anymore.
It's not actually.
No,
anymore.
they're not distinguishing themselves from some of those elements. And I do think that they have imbibed some of these elements, not necessarily the tear America down revolutionary spirit, but the sort of like focus on America's original sin and the unnecessary focus on anti-racism that turns into racism against whites and Asians and Jews and stuff like
But they're
this.
backing away from that. They're backing away from a lot of that.
Some of them are, but even that is hard to know, like how much of that is just like cynical reading the tea leaves. And I mean, I guess I'll take that, but that just goes to my problem of like, are these decisions based on like what is?
That's just politics, though. That's just politics.
Yeah.
We should expect the government to shift with the political winds of the electorate.
I think,
that's just politics.
Well, they shifted with the political winds of the complete left-wing cultural dominance that we had for decades in this country, and so the left did move left again, even if they're not completely captured by the crazies. The liberals imbibed through osmosis, absorbed.
The party did move left on a number of issues. Like, for example, we used to have over 4 dozen pro-life Democrats serving in the House just fucking 12 years ago or 15 years ago when Obama was president. Now there's one in the entire Congress. The party moved left on gay marriage. Biden certainly moved left in terms of policy. He made a lot of concessions to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie. So I'm not saying that's not happening, but like this, the rhetoric that, I don't know, is the Democratic Party barreling towards, fucking socialism or communism? I think all that is just complete nonsense.
I will say my fear here, because I agree, we aren't like, I think we're painted by the right as far more left than we are. That's true. But my argument, and this is kind of to call back to the original thing that brought this all up, right? Is I think that there are elements who do want us to. There are elements out there who want us, the left, to the Democrats, to barrel as far left as they can, and they're actively working to get that to happen.
Look at California, the bluest state in the country, California, and they just passed a wildly YIMBY bill just a month ago that got rid of a lot of the zoning regulations.
We have to separate. We have to separate voters from activists and politicians, because they're not the same. And I agree with you that the voting base, and this is why I don't want us to go far or left, because the voting base does not want us to, as despite what a lot of people would say, right? Oh, we just need more socialist policies and they'll vote for us. No, that's the opposite of true. And we were punished for it, and we've been punished for it in 2024, right? But I will say this, that there are people like who are inserting themselves into positions of influence and power in the Democratic Party. Again, if the Democratic Party listens to Hassan on NPR, we're going to lose, because the voters don't want that, despite what NPR might think, despite what Hassan might think, despite what all these things other people might think. The voters, large part, do not want anything to do with that. So I worry that there are bad actors. I don't know if NPR is just stupid, or if they're bad actors within NPR, or I don't know, but they are trying to paint, look at Hassan and look at these people. They are the face of the left, and we need to stop that, right? We need to stop that.
The irony,
NPR and their listeners do want that. And also, to just to slightly amend that, I don't think voters know necessarily that they don't want Hassan, because for as famous as he is in our spheres, he's a completely unknown entity to the broader population. But NPR and the New York Times and Pod Save America and all of these places are completely laundering his reputation.
This is
so if the only exposure they have to someone like Hassan is through these mainstream outlets, they're not going to know that he jokes about 9/11, that he believes that babies should be fair targets, in Israeli settlements and all of these things. They won't know any of that, because they allow him to come on with his little He did.
Settle
He talked
baby.
about baby settlers. He did.
I just want to be fair to Hassan. He said, like, well, there can be settler babies, but I don't know if
there's no need to. I mean.
Okay, but Tali.
Listen, look, I criticize Hassan a lot. I'm just saying, I do not think that he was saying it's okay to kill babies. I just want to be clear about my position on that. I don't co-sign that, but yeah.
I get it. But Tali,
he thinks it's not ideal.
Tali, here's a mistake.
It's imperfect resistance. I mean, there's just so much.
I don't want to get us stuck on the Hassan thing.
I don't know.
I'm going to throw a flag on the play, because whether or not Hassan meant babies should be exiled or killed, I don't know, and I don't care. Right? He's crazy for other reasons. What I will say, right, the mistake that I think that you and a lot of people make, Tali, is thinking, well, the voters don't know who Hassan is, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if the voters know who he is for him to have influence. He can, in fact, the fact that voters don't know who he is plays into his favor and allows him to have more influences than he does, because all it takes is staffers.
What I was trying to say.
Well, but we're gonna see NPR move left, and this is the irony of defunding NPR, because now they're going to be
there's nowhere left for them to move.
No. Hang on a second. NPR was at best center left for years. This was not a wildly socialist.
Not in the last 10 years, Hutch.
I think
NPR has lost a lot of their moderate base for a long time now.
Okay, I mean, I never saw any evidence that NPR was moving in a literally radical Marxist Leninist direction. Like when I listen to This American Life, it's that is a completely nonpartisan show. There's not really a lot of politics infused there. But the irony is that NPR is now going to go wildly to the left, because they're completely beholden to the individual donors and the big donors, and they're going to skew way further to the left than the median Democrat. So I fully expect that NPR will just transition into potentially even No. Hang on.
No, I agree with you. Hold on.
Hassan,
let me temper.
Look at Hassan.
Let me temper.
Hold on. Let Hutch go. Hutch, finish your point. Then Tali goes.
Think about Hassan. That's extreme radical left-wing politics, right? You're suggesting that NPR didn't have much further room to go. You're suggesting that they were like Hassan. Where did you say, what are you referencing?
I'm going to temper my statement. So I agree, obviously. NPR has not been Marxist Leninist or revolutionary communist or anarcho, any of these things. So in that sense, they've got lots of room on the left horseshoe to move. Sure, I agree with you there. But NPR has not been moderate, middle of the road, just tell you, what's going on in your local community for at least the last 5, I would say probably 10 years. The NPR has been identitarian left, far left in that direction. I think these are kind of different directions, the communist left and the hyper progressive woke left, but NPR has been in the woke left camp for a long time. They have
I would have to see the
strayed
headlines
from
that you're
their.
looking at. I mean, I just
There
like
are
my.
s- Okay,
I
The head of
listen
the
to
NPR.
you should look them up.
I remember watching a clip of the head of the NPR. What's her name? It's escaping me at the moment. Basically
Are you
saying,
talking
well,
about Democracy Now? Like that host? She's like the most famous NPR
not the
person,
host,
right?
the owner of NPR.
Oh, I don't
Right.
know who the owner is.
Some lady. Does anyone got the name? I want to get the name. And if anyone has a clip I'm referring to, please send that to me. I don't have it on my fingertips. I didn't think we were going to talk about NPR. But basically, a few years ago, she basically said, well, the truth, we don't really care about that too much, right? We're more interested in other
Oh, I know what
things.
you're
You know
talking
what I'm
about.
talking
Yeah.
about? You
She was
remember
like
this?
she was young too, I think.
Yeah.
Like a young CEO.
Yeah,
But I thought she was wait, hold on. I thought she was doing that to defend covering right wingers more diplomatically. Like I think that was the context of that, wasn't it? Hold on. NPR.
I'd have to again. I don't. This is something that I'm remembering, right? Like, so I don't have it in a clip. I'd have to find it.
Mara has expressed the idea of objective truth is a stiffy, antiquated, and culturally constructed notion that must give way to the idea that there are many truths. This perspective has been interpreted by some as a shift away from the traditional focus on truth in journalism towards a more subjective and collaborative approach. So when she said that, she actually got heat from progressives. It wasn't her saying that she was just going to make shit up about Trump. That's not what she meant by that. You took the exact opposite meaning of what she was saying.
I don't know. Like, I'm sure that there are some who may have interpreted that way, but combined with some of their other moves, and also I think an ex-NPR employee, basically a whistleblower, came out around the same time saying that they were really pushing far left stuff. What's the guy's name again? I wish I had this on my tip, but you guys.
I'll look more into it. Maybe
Yeah,
I just
please.
skimmed the headline there, but yeah.
Yeah, she was questioned about my chat saying it. You're wrong, but I don't know. My chats sometimes are dumb. Like I'll be real. The chat is sometimes stupid, so I don't trust them.
I do remember she got a ton of grief from progressives and lefties for saying that. They were really pissed at her, but I guess everybody was pissed at her for different reasons. I guess everybody interpreted what she said for
right. But my point with all this, right, like, is that, and again, to bring it back to the focus of what I'm trying to say about all this, is that how this works is you get staffers in positions of influence to these politicians that don't actually have, again, the staffers don't have to win elections, right? They don't have to court the voters. That's not how they get hired. That's not how they get chosen. They get chosen by appealing to individuals, right? And different processes depending on the position, right? These people, and there's a word for it, entryism, right? These people, their active agenda is to push us left, to basically be a parasite on the Democratic Party, right? They don't have to win, they don't have to appeal to voters, they just have to have the voters vote Democrat, and then they can make it something else. And I think that's what's happening.
They want to launder in, that is a real thing. And like entryism was like, that actually has a historical context in a specific context in was it Russia or France? I'm not sure. I just became familiar with that term last week, actually. But I mean, that's true. That happens, and to the extent that happens, we should identify it for what it is. So like Hassan on NPR is a perfect example of this, because he was on NPR and he, didn't reject the label of progressive when she put it on him. And he started talking about how, the benefits of social democracy. And it was just this wild juxtaposition. Because if you pull up his appearance on Second Thoughts podcast from two years ago, he was, and Lonebarks covered this on his stream. And but he was, back then he was saying social democracy, or implying that social democracy was bad because it and this is like a really persistent leftist belief about social democracy, or like Marxist Leninists. They believe that social democracy is sometimes even worse than fascism because it makes capitalism more palatable. And therefore it's like, yeah. So anyways, he just wildly contradicted himself. He obviously hit his power level when he went on NPR, and people should point that out and, highlight the absurdity of that. And I would say whoever that interviewer's team was failed her in the same way that maybe Slotkin team failed her. But yeah.
Heard
I
you
do have to
say
get
that.
Yeah,
going here
we
pretty
are-
soon,
we
just so
are-
you guys know.
Yeah, we are wrapping up. I don't want to again hold you hostage or anything, but I guess.
Do you normally take viewer callers after these, or
Do you
or
want
do you
to?
just cut it off?
mean, I was just gonna.
Well, yeah, I was kind of giving you like a little bit of a, like, we'll say like
Okay,
a
we can
20,
do that.
25 minute warning.
Here,
Or...
tell you what, Tali, you have mod powers. Gang, if you want to call in and if you have questions for me, Tali, or Hutch, jump backstage, jump in the Discord, jump backstage, and we'll pull you in one at a time and be brief.
I will be right back.
Yeah, I got to use the restroom too. So, Tali,
Oh.
no slurs while I'm gone, okay? You have the show.
I'll
Go
try.
ahead.
Wow, just me. How do I entertain you crazy kids? Hopefully people, okay, we got one person backstage. If you would like to yell at any of us, now would be the time to hop backstage. What kind of slurs should I say, guys? I don't really know. Is he streaming on Twitch? He'll break up with me if I get his Twitch demonetized, so it's the only reason I'm not slurring away right now for Wick's financial benefit. Yeah, Chachi McSwag, what a name. I agree. I think that NPR, like, so, I mean, not to relitigate this with Hutch here now, but the reason that the Trump administration went after NPR is because they have been on this trajectory for several years now. So it wasn't like just a random shot in the dark at someone who like pissed him off or was writing something unfavorable about him. I do think that NPR just has been like, I was trying to look up some headlines, but it's less fun to just pick one out. But there are games that people have constructed of like, wait until how many minutes or how many seconds into, listening to the broadcast until they, hit one of the buzzwords. So I do think this has been a trajectory of NPR for a little while now.
I was looking at like this site called All Sides Media Bias Chart. They have NPR is center left. I know the other one, the other one that was like way more famous, they had them pretty close to the center. I don't know. Admittedly, I haven't listened to NPR in a while, but I used to listen to NPR all the time. And they were quite non-political. Like when I think of like This American Life is like their most popular show, and that was never an overtly partisan show, like ever at any point.
I agree. Well, and I can just tell you from like the circles that I run in of disaffected liberals, even though most of the people that I'm talking about did not vote Trump in the way that I did, they did not make that final switch and smash against the left. These are people who were like former NPR devotees and paying members and stuff like this who feel really disaffected. And I think with some of these things, it depends on kind of like what you were getting at before, the axis that we're measuring when we say like how far left or how far right. So yeah, I think like economically, they're not socialists, right? They're not communists. So in that sense, like maybe they're center left. But I think on cultural issues, they severely overcompensated. They got caught up in the left-wing cultural rush of, I don't know, Me Too onward, basically, at least. So maybe I'll put it at like 2017, 2016. Maybe it went before that. Maybe it started with, Trump, and it's hard to say who to blame, which side got grosser and worse first. But I do think that NPR has been on
I also suspect that center left looks like far left to MAGA people, and so I'm sure that has a part to play in this as well.
MAGA, there's a lot of things, but let's bring.
But I was telling you that it's disaffected liberals who still vote Democrat who feel this way about like that. Those are the only people that I've ever heard that I've cared about their criticism of NPR is not from MAGA sycophants, but of, again, disaffected liberals who most of them still voted for Kamala, who just feel like culturally NPR has been going in an unpopular, or maybe culturally popular, but
I just question that judgment. Like Huffington Post is obviously like really partisan. That's an example of not far left in the sense that they're Marxists, but definitely just heavily partisan in favor of Democrats. That's an example of like a really partisan NPR.
Yeah, I didn't say partisan.
Well,
I didn't say partisan.
sure.
I said culturally
We're getting stuck on this.
identitarian and woke and all of
we're
these
getting
things.
stuck on
Yeah,
this, and I don't know if we need to get stuck on this because I do have a couple super chats that we're going to bring callers in because Hutch has a limited time, and I want to make sure that we get as many callers as we can. But I do got to make a little money, so let's read some of these super chats, and then we'll be good. So $2 from Artemis Fowl to say send them to reminder camps. All back. $5 from Artemis Fowl to say the goal of socialism is communism. Rue. Jacob Hawley for $5 to say John McCain tried his sister soldier moment in the town hall debate when he corrected the one lady who said Obama wasn't American and he lost Whick. Yeah, that's because Obama did it better when he denounced his pastor, right? So they both did the same thing. Obama was just better at it, right? So, this guy tried a thing once and it didn't work. It must never work. Is just silly. Better Methodist for $5 say, sorry I'm late. I brought my horse and I brought his shoes. Thank you. $5 from Gelatinous Rube to say, at Wick, would you support my run for Texas governor as healthcare super Hitler? No, I would not support super Hitler. $5 from Rabid Wombat to say, there is a world where Trump ran as a Democrat in 2016. Would Hutch have voted and defended Trump and all the EOs then and in 2024 for more judges?
Ask the question again.
If Trump ran as a Democrat, would you have voted for Trump?
What with the same platform? With the same platform, or would he have a liberal platform? If he had a liberal platform, yeah, I would have voted for Trump for sure.
Okay. Tali, do you know who jumped backstage first? I don't know. Did you watch?
I think it was In Pursuit.
Okay.
I think that was the first one, and then the rest I have no idea the order.
Well, we'll
but
just go in random order.
I do want to say real quick though, like when you said communism is the goal of socialism, that's true in a strictly Marxist lens, but leftism and socialism has evolved at this point for 150 years. And so there are different schools of thought when it comes to that sort of thing. It is not necessarily the case that every person who describes himself as a socialist would say that communism is the end goal. I just feel like we need to say that.
Okay. In Pursuit, go ahead. You're here.
Hey, yes.
You're on stage. Go ahead.
Yeah. I guess, the whole conversation is interesting because we're now in a world where the Republican Party is just North Korea, America, right? We're not living in a world where policies matter. So is it really bad for NPR to go, I don't know, more propaganda, right? I mean, why were they having to cudgel themselves this entire time to be held as a center left when there's literally no one in the media space that does this now? It doesn't make sense that there's one side that's clearly breaking all the rules, and here we are on the left saying, "Oh my goodness, we have to moderate ourselves to be nice and to not be able to be too mean and to be unelectable," right? I don't understand it. And it's all the thing with Wick. Me and Wick, we've discussed this before, but anyway.
Well, so first you would have to demonstrate the value of the Republican Party becoming more extreme. And I think you can make the opposite case. We had Laksha on from a split ticket on the podcast last week. And he was talking about how the Republican margins in this last election should have been way better. Like it should have been a bloodbath. After 2 years of inflation, that's a really difficult thing for any incumbent party to overcome. But because Donald Trump is such an extremist candidate, and because he elevates other Republican extremist candidates over more moderate candidates, they only got like a 5-seat majority in the House and a 3-seat majority in the Senate. They're going to have a really tough time defending during these midterms now because of this like tiny majority on top of historical precedent. I would argue that Trump's extremism has just been a net bad for the party. The other thing I want to say is like Democrats are getting scrappy right now. I don't know why we're saying like, I always hear this, like Democrats don't know how to fight. They're not like, look at what they're doing right now. My Democratic Party is out there like being scrappy and fighting and fleeing to fucking Illinois and amending the state constitution. We got Chuck Schumer trying to compel the DOJ to hand over Epstein files with like an archaic Senate rule. He blocked a bunch of nominees the other day by using some procedural rules. So I think we are seeing like the Democrats fighting right now. Just give it time for people to catch on, I guess.
I'm putting more in the frame of the election, 6 months ago, not the consequences of that election. I do appreciate that Democrats are doing it. I just don't think that we were doing it before. And now because we're seeing the consequences of a cult party completely taken over, winning people like Tali over is disgusting. And I'm glad that this is what it takes. It takes fighting fire with fire, right? Newsom should absolutely gerrymander the fuck out of California and say we will de-gerrymander it once we sit in a room and have these kind of discussions
That's
to
not
actually
being
have
mean.
representation in the United States.
That's not
That's
being
not
mean.
being
You're trying
mean?
to sneak this in. You're saying, I want people to be mean and shit on Republicans. That's why I support the gerrymandering of California. No, these are not the same, right? They're not the same at all.
Hold on. You don't think gerrymandering a state out of their representatives, their voters, is being like that's just everyday politics?
No, it's
and
not
just,
the same as saying,
whatever.
ha ha ha, those dead kids in Texas are funny. No, these are different
Yeah, you're right.
things.
It's worse. I think it's way worse. To take away the representation is a lot worse
I
than
disagree.
making fun of dead kids in Texas.
I think that the electorate responds to these things very differently because gerrymandering isn't new. This is something that's been going on since before I was born, that they always do this. This isn't something we're reintroducing.
It's more extreme than ever, Wick. It's more extreme than ever.
We've always been trying to do. Like, and to be clear, sometimes we gerrymander and it fails. Like we fail-amander, okay? This is one of the reasons why the 2000 election didn't go the way it should have, is because the Democratic Party tried to gerrymander Florida, and it didn't work, okay? It just failed. So we got to keep that in mind. But no, I don't think gerrymandering is the same thing, not the same type, not the same style as what you're actually advocating for here, and stop trying to sneak it in. Stop.
We should also talk about your complaint that they moderate like towards the center is like, well, you know, Democrats, they feel the need to moderate. Well, the Republicans are not even doing that. Democrats, the general election candidate, they're going to moderate to the center because that's how you win national elections. That's just that's we haven't had the case where somebody just ran on, you know, an explicitly like democratically socialist platform like FDR in you know, nearly a century. Like every other winning Democratic politician or general election candidate, presidential candidate, you expand your tent by appealing to to independents and moderates in the middle. That's just the recipe for how to win. If you can give me a single example of
Well, no, what I'm saying, Hutch, is that, I mean, like Tali, she's a perfect example of this. She voted for Trump because she believed that they were the more moderate candidate, right? To a response to the extremeness of the left, right? Even though Kamala, we all agree, was a very moderate candidate, especially from her 2016 appearance. So
she moderated a bit.
I agree with you. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think moderating absolutely does win elections, except the last one, because we have polarization caused by the internet, creating cult-like statuses where people are being fed information that feeds into their fear. The Conservative Party today is not one of back in, you know, when I was a kid with Bush, right? They're completely taken over by a cult, and they're a witch hunt party. It's all about conspiracies. It's about stifling all this, getting all those fears stoked up, and making sure that the Democrat pedophiles get, you know, kicked out, right? I mean, we're not fighting on the same song sheet.
This party that you're talking about, the Republican Party that you're pointing to, they lost in 2018, they lost in 2020, they lost in 2022, and they only barely won in 2024 because the 2024 election was super weird when we pushed out Biden at the last minute and we had all this inflation. There was so many weird things going around, like, we don't want to be more like the losers because they're going to lose.
And the leader of their party is tanking right now. Like I don't think their prospects are really good in the short term right now. If I'm looking at the 2026 midterms, I feel really good. Yeah. And I honestly, at this point, I feel good about 2028. Like Trump is he is just really fucking, I mean, I just
he's
feel like
flailing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I don't know. I don't want to emulate that in my party. I don't think we should take that strategy. I don't think it's.
I'm not saying that we should emulate. I just
don't
think we should matter. Okay. We shouldn't matter. We shouldn't care what the Republicans are saying to us.
Okay.
We should continue what we do.
Okay. Pursuit. Thanks for calling in, buddy. I'll talk to you later. We're gonna get as many as we can. Okay. I'm just gonna go in bottom to top. So hello, Untrodden Podcast. You're live.
Hello. Cool. Yeah, so I've been hanging out around here because I have like a new podcast and I've been talking to a lot of Marxists. Even though I'm kind of more liberal, but I see myself as kind of like an ambassador between the real Marxists and the liberals.
Ambassador. Give us what you got.
Yeah, I feel like what's being left out of this conversation is like the debate about like reformists and tankies, it doesn't come out of nowhere. Like there's a whole, I would argue that the leftist movement was like a real political movement that just kind of like lost all steam and legitimacy, and then it degraded into those two sides. But there's actually, I would argue, like a real socialism, we could say, which is more intelligent, more rich intellectually and politically, that just kind of died. And I feel like when we don't talk about that degradation, like we're not really clear about what socialism means. And then it just becomes, a little unclear.
Can you?
I agree
ahead.
with you, by the way. I think the tendency for people
what do you mean
to
by
just
socialism then? Like I don't understand. Like you're saying socialism, but the good kind.
But that's the thing. Like there is not one socialism. Like it is a very, very broad term. Like there are so many different ways that people approach socialism, and a lot of it is authoritarian and bad and that kind of thing. Tankies are on the extreme end of that or whatever. But
tankies aren't socialists. Tankies are communists. That's the difference, right? They're not socialists. They're communists, which is a different thing.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think that's a real distinction. I think that's kind of like a distinction that, like, I mean, it might like exist. I mean, it exists like relatively in the modern world, but it's not really like, I think when we talk about tankies, what's important about them is not that they're socialists, it's that they're authoritarian reactionaries who gave up on their intellectual tradition because they're weak. That's what I would say. And it's important because
I don't mean to interrupt.
They're violent.
I'm sorry, but this annoyed me during my Thursday show, which went off the rails, right? And it was more of the Pisco versus Destiny hour because they had personal beef and we didn't really. Anyway, whatever. What you say? Well, socialism, we can't really define it because there's so many. No, you have to. For us to have this discussion, you have to talk to me. What socialism do you mean? Give it to me in like an elevator pitch here. When you were saying I'm an ambassador for socialism or whatever, explain it to me, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not saying like there's like one objectively correct, but my point is more like there's like a critique that socialism offers of capitalism and of liberalism, and I feel like we're just kind of dodging that critique and pretending like there's no good reason to engage with that critique. And then no one, whether they're reformist socialists, they're not really engaging with that critique because they're just capitalists. And then if they're authoritarian, they're not really engaging with that critique. So I would say a real socialist is someone who is critiquing capitalism, the contradiction of capitalism, and they want to have a political movement. If they're a Marxist, they want to have a dictatorship of the proletariat. That's really all it means, right? But when we obsess over tankies and reformists, it's like reformists don't care about any of that. They just want to improve people's rights, which has very little to do with at least Marxism. Maybe pre-Marx, you could say that's related, but yeah.
What would you consider a socialist policy?
I don't think so. Socialism isn't a policy platform. Socialism is a like counter to the industrialization and the like bourgeois revolutions or whatever. Obviously, that's from a socialist perspective, but like it's a critique of the capitalist mode of production.
We're talking about the means of production. So like if the state owns the means of production of one particular industry, then that would be socialism, right? Like what's the difference between like the NHS and the Canadian system? Like the NHS, I think the UK, they actually own the means of production. They actually run that healthcare system themselves. Excuse me. Whereas like the Canadian system is they have universal coverage, but they still rely on like private insurance to I don't know. I'm not qualified, but like I feel like the caller. Can you talk about like the relationship of the ownership of the means of production? Like what does that have to do with socialist policy?
Right. So I mean, yeah. So there are like socialism does predate Marx, and so a lot of those socialists were just like rich people are bad. So there is that. But Marxism, which is like the majority tendency, the majority thing, Marxism is really about the contradiction and the alienation of labor. So it says there's something intrinsically about the labor extraction through capital in capitalism, which is a fundamental like feature of basically all of modern society. It says there's something fundamentally exploitive and alienating about that, and that is a contradiction. And due to Hegelian philosophy, they say, like Marx says, we know that contradiction is something that has to be overcome, sublated, whatever. And so, yeah, that's the main problem.
But it wasn't. But Marxism wasn't just a critique; it was also a prediction. He didn't.
Yeah,
He left a
well,
lot of stuff vague, but I mean, he did have a sort of prediction for how he
for
thought the world
Marx,
was.
again, because of Hegel and Kant and all that, those are like the same thing, right? So the critique is like they're the same thing. You critique the society, you point out the contradiction, and thus, because of the contradiction, necessarily there's another step, which is what you're talking about with the prediction. That's the
Yeah.
prediction being that there's a contradiction, you have to overcome it with something, and that would be the working class.
Yeah, it's like a critique and an ideology. But
I don't know. I just
you got to get into the
unfortunately,
weeds. You got to get into the weeds. I'm just saying, like, there's just
I think they
there's-
hide.
there-
I think they hide amongst the weeds is the problem.
some do. Some have that perspective, but I think
See, but, like-
you're
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to
Okay.
say, like, I don't feel like I'm hiding behind the weeds because I'm willing to write off all those authoritarians as authoritarians. I'm not saying, no, they're like, they're socialists and they're doing their best, and they're like, I don't feel like I'm playing that game because, again, I'm a liberal. Like, I don't like those people
I don't think
any
you
more
can be
than
a
you do.
liberal and a socialist at the same time. That's my.
I'm not. I didn't say I'm a socialist. I said I'm an ambassador. Okay.
Oh,
The
okay.
ambassador to France is not French. Okay. He's just trying to communicate between the two countries. That's what I'm doing. So I feel like I've learned a lot about socialism. I feel like there's something meaningful to talk about, and that's all I'm like trying to like
Sure.
argue for.
someone in my chat said saying that socialism existed before Marx is mental. This is just a fact. Like you can just look up like
Yeah, it is,
socialism.
yeah.
Socialism, the concept predates Marx by like 50 years or something like that. It was like the intelligentsia in Europe at the time were just like there were a couple people that were talking about it in a very like abstract sense. I mean, you said it was basically just like rich people are bad or something like that, and they were just observing that inequality was bad and that this needed to be remedied or something like that. Marx came along and he gave it like a very specific kind of form.
Yeah, but I
and
don't
then
think
people
that.
took that and branched off in like 1,000 different directions.
Okay, but Hutch, I don't think that saying that inequality is bad means it's socialism. Liberalism, egalitarian liberalism also wants to look at different inequalities and things. It just takes a different tack, and it goes about the inequality between the state and the individual. I don't want to get into the theory here, right? But at the end of the day, my problem with socialists and socialism, right, is that they are fundamentally at odds with liberalism. I don't think they can coexist unless liberalism is the current government and things. But socialists, if they had their way, if they got their ideal, I think that it would necessitate the destruction or the pushing aside of liberalism.
But you can take a look at the synthesis of like socialism and laissez-faire capitalism to social democratic governments in Europe, and like
Those are not socialist governments.
No, but they were influenced by socialist thought, though. Like that's the point. It was a synthesis. It was like why are you doing this? Like in the post-war era, governments started to understand that they needed to take stronger steps to provide people with social safety nets that would prevent the sort of destabilization that prefaced the World War I and World War II. And so they started doing stuff like a national health program in the UK specifically because of that.
Okay, but
that came from like socialist thinkers that were raising these issues.
Okay, that's a socialist policy, you might argue, but it exists within a liberal structure and a liberal foundation. My argument, and what I'm saying, is that if you take out that liberal foundation, as if socialists got their way, they would do, right? I think it necessitates that to happen. Then I don't think the socialist governments can win. Like the Nordic model is not socialist. It is capitalist. It is.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that the synthesis of these ideas produced good outcomes. That's why I think like the caller, for example, that's why he's trying to act as an ambassador. It's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're trying to like synthesize a little bit here, right?
A little bit, but I also think we need to understand like why the Nordic countries aren't socialist. And the reason is because socialists would say that, like they would, Wick, when you're saying like all of this is capitalism, socialists would say, yeah, obviously, because socialists would say the capitalist state is a very like adaptive thing, but it's all based on the social relation and the alienation of labor. And so that's why socialism is really about breaking that fundamentally. And until you're breaking that, I agree with you, that's not socialism. And that's why the Nordic countries aren't socialist, because they're not fundamentally breaking that relation. But yeah, I don't know. And we have to also distinguish between like the way words are used and like principles, right? So like the early socialists, they use the word socialist, but we wouldn't identify them as like Marxist socialists today because they really were just saying rich people are bad, which is why people like Jefferson, the founding father, he was sympathetic to socialism too. because he was like, yeah, socialism, liberalism, it's all great. Like we should care about these things because the meanings of the words didn't develop historically as they have so far. But like I just feel like my main point is we have to be clear about our terms and like what we're talking about when, and then we start blending things together and misusing terms. And
well, thank you for calling in. It's unfortunately a wider discussion needs to be had, and we're going to have that on Thursday's show. Destiny and Econoboy are going to go one-on-one, right, about this specific topic, capitalism versus socialism. So tune in for that, and maybe you can have some notes at the end. Thank you for calling in, sir.
Somebody said in my chat also, the labor theory of value was way before Marx, Hutch. I don't know if socialism as such, anarchists and syndicalists. Yeah, I mean, that's true, but what did he add to it? It was like he added a word to it. Like he added his own spin to the labor theory of value and turned it into something distinctly Marxist.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Okay, Honkler, what's up?
Hey there.
Okay, so I got a quick question for you, Hutch, because I know that you hang out with Lonerbox a fair bit. So I've been meaning to ask him this question, but maybe you have the answer too. You cool with that?
So to be clear, I consider him a pal. We've spoken a few times, but that's
all right. I'll just go ahead and fire away.
I can speak for him, but yeah.
I'm not asking you to speak for him. I'm asking you if you have if you know this perspective, right? Because I don't know this perspective, and I'm trying to figure it out. So I've been a trans medicalist for a good long while now, right? And the only other like take on that, like non-transphobic take on that I''ve seen has been like self-ID, right? So I'm trying to find out what the Steelman argument of an anti-trans medicalist take is in the way of like you don't have to have gender dysphoria. You don't have to have gender dysphoria in order to be transgender, which I don't understand that. And I'm wondering if you do.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm so outside of my depth discussing that. Yeah.
Tali's like, I got this, but I don't know if this is the...
Go for it, Tali.
Well, my wife is blending a smoothie. Can you guys hear it in the background?
No.
Wow, incredible technology. Okay. I might need you to sharpen your question once more. So what is a non-transphobic rebuttal to transmedicalism? I think Whick and Hutch don't even know what these words mean. So I'm so glad that you called in.
I've been streaming enough. I know what transmedicalism is.
Right. So like what I'm wondering is what made me want to ask the question is Lonerbox said on stream like a week ago or something like that. It's like you don't have to have gender dysphoria to be transgender, and that I didn't understand that. Okay. And that's kind of what I'm wondering.
Hold on, buddy. I think you're just gonna need to have to ask Lonerbox this question because you'll have to see what he means.
Tali, you want to give it a shot, or do you're not sure?
Yeah, I do. So
okay, briefly, please.
Lonerbox is reiterating what is sort of, so that's just the too cute position, right? So there's the trans medicalists, and then there's the too cutes, right? And so those are the people who take that stance that you don't need to be suffering from dysphoria to be trans, that it is essentially like anyone. I think the Steelman argument for that, it's essentially like a libertarian argument of like each person has the right to self-determination and the right to identify in whichever way and to modify their aesthetics in whatever way. My personal perspective falls like somewhere in between transmedicalism and self-ID. I lean much more towards self-ID because I don't think we have very good ways of assessing like dysphoria is a self-report measure in any way that we can meaningfully measure it. And so I think like so anyone who wants to like identify as something and present in a certain way, I don't really think there should be any barriers to that. Okay. And I think the transmedicalist position, Wick wants me to get off this so badly. The transmedicalist position is like, I think it's kind of a losing ship right now. So these are like the people like Brianna Wu, right, who are trying to
right.
Their
Which she's
view
cringe.
is like she's the cringiest, yeah. But their view is like, how can we try to hold on to some semblance of this? And I think there's a lot of truth to it. A lot of trans people are suffering, from sex dysphoria and gender dysphoria and however we want to label it. But it's not actually as simple as gender dysphoria is this clear-cut diagnosis, and anyone who has this should follow this treatment plan. And so I see issues with the transmedicalist approach, even like Brianna's ideas of like, okay, you shouldn't be allowed in women's spaces unless you have bottom surgery or something like this, but that incentivizes dangerous surgery for people who might not want or need it, etc.
Okay, great.
I got
Thank you
you.
for calling
I
in,
got you.
sir. I just don't know about this. Okay, we can have it.
Bye, sir. We can talk later.
Hello,
Yeah,
you're
that was
live.
cold.
How we doing, folks?
Oh, so far so good. What you got for us?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, Hutch, pleasure to speak with you.
Nice to meet you.
Listener for a little bit.
Thanks.
I think about this, like the future of the Democratic Party, and like it's how it navigates like this new media ecosystem, like this alternative media system. And I think like there's two issues I see. And I see it with like NPR, and I see it with like the PodSave guys, and I kind of see it with like Hutch, your podcast co-host, like Pisco, which is like, I think there's the two issues are, one, they are dipping their toes into waters they are unfamiliar with, right? If you want to identify, like, if you want to be able to identify like the dangers that like someone like Hassan or that just general side recognizes, like they are purposefully hiding. And you kind of have to know how to ID it. And I think like the PodSafe guys don't know how to ID that. I don't think NPR knows how to ID that.
Certainly not.
And then I think the second issue that we are facing is that I think there's a bunch of people that are fighting the last war. Like, I think people still see, like, I think about the Hassan, like the question of who's closer to us, like, or who'd you rather vote for, who's more ideologically closer to us, like Hassan or Trump. Because I think a lot of people see, well, the answer is Hassan because we're liberals, we're Democrats, and so we're on the left, and Hassan's on the left. But I think that's out of date at this point. I think like you have to view it as the quadrant graph, where like the x-axis is the like Democrat to Republican, and then the y-axis is libertarian and like authoritarian, right? Where liberal would be somewhere down there. So I think like the better question, which I brought up this question before, is like, I think the better question there is like, is Hassan closer to us, or is Hassan closer to Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is, I think the battle that we're fighting right now in political spaces is liberalism versus authoritarianism. And I think like the focus, I think the focus has to be like, you can interact with those individuals. You have to be really aggressive with them. And I think when I think back about that Vanguard interview, I think probably what frustrated people is that those were two individuals that absolutely weren't hiding. And I just think there has to be a mindset change, just with the broader like liberal ecosystem. If they're going to interact with these people, they have to recognize that they have to be very aggressive with them. They have to adopt an aggressive liberalism.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I have no notes. I agree with everything you just said. I think the Vanguard is a bit, honestly, I don't know how ideological they really are. Like they seemed kind of incoherent to me, and they're kind of silly. Like but with Hassan, it's a bit different because that he is making he does have an ideology, but he takes steps to mask that. I think Vanguard, I don't even know what they believe in. The things that they're saying.
I think they believe the same thing. And can I ask you, like, there was a point when you were grilling the Vanguard over what they should do about Manchin, and like you pushed back past through all their excuses. What did they eventually say?
They didn't care.
Well, no, what they wanted to have the DOJ investigate Manchin, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. That. Yeah.
Which is what Hassan says, and which is what Cenk and Anna have also said that.
Yeah, it
Like-
spreads. I mean, it's like, one creator says it and then it kind of spreads from there, like all it takes is one of them saying it on a stream, or it's usually Hassan because he's just super influential, but it'll be like a tweet or he'll say it on stream and then other people see that pop up in their feed and they go, oh, that's a good idea. And they don't really like fucking critically examine it for longer than 2 seconds.
That's why I say
yeah.
that people like Hassan and things are thought leaders, right? This is
Yeah.
that at play. They will put out a thing which gets adopted by a larger swath of creators, not necessarily even related to that, right? But thought leaders do this. They package takes and ideas and they put it out into the discourse, which gets adopted by others. And that's the danger, I think, when we uncritically or not as critically as we should engage with these people and don't recognize them as the dangers they are, right? Like, so engaging with Vanguard and not recognizing them as illiberal will lead you to maybe adopt some of their ideas, which I think is dangerous. That's my thought.
Yeah, there's
But quickly, because
kind
we do have to wrap up. So last thoughts?
no, I just Hutch, Wick, I really appreciate you being aggressively liberal. I think like there is, I guess we're going to be capitalist about it, a market for this, and I really appreciate you being,
Thank you.
use an ironic statement, the vanguard on this. So
Our power level is growing. Okay. Our numbers are growing. We're building a movement. We're assembling the Avengers.
I do want to coin the term hard R liberal. Okay, if I can do that,
I think
that's
it's a horrible branding. I don't
love
co-sign
it.
just for the
Okay,
record.
I understand.
aggressive liberalism.
That's the
Let's
move.
go.
That's the one right there. There you go.
Yep.
I love that.
All
Is
right.
good.
All
That is
right.
good branding.
Thank you, caller. I'll talk to you later. Oh, what a nice gentleman.
I'm all in for hard R
Okay,
liberalism.
look, we can
Okay, all
discuss it. I will take the L that I am not the best at branding. That's true, right? I have a trouble with coming up with coining phrases and terms, but we'll see. Last
It's
caller.
fun. It's edgy. It's kind of meta. It's like the way that people use liberal as a slur. We're like reclaiming that. I think it's cool. I like it. I like it, Wick.
Okay, Jebtan, we do have a hard out in about 5 minutes, so quickly and concisely, sir. Go ahead.
Sorry, your mic is
Yeah,
muted.
you're muted. Your end. Nope. Nope.
Anything now?
Oh,
Oh,
there we
there it
go.
is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I had the phantom power off. Okay, 2 notes, one leads into the other. I know Hutch, he approves of the idea of California retaliatorily redistricting. Wick, you didn't really give an opinion on it. You just said it wasn't mean earlier. Do you support California
In
redistricting?
theory, why not? Gerrymandering isn't new.
Well, I have a reason why not. It is
Okay, what's the
against
reason?
California's state constitution.
Not for long.
Yeah, can they
Okay.
amend the Constitution?
Can they amend it? No, not unless the people vote on it. So
They-
the state can't.
Okay, so
No,
let
no,
me
no,
give you
hang
my
on.
take here, Jebtan. As long as they do it in the right way, in the legal way, I'm for it.
So
No,
since
the process is just to be clear. The governor can call for can convene the legislature, who can vote on a measure to put the amendment to the voters. The governor can then call for a special election for the voters to then vote on that. And so there is a democratic process to change our constitution, obviously.
yeah, so the vote would have to do it. So are you saying you only support it if they do a vote and it passes, or are you okay with him doing it and then forcing someone to sue him for it?
Well, let me ask you a question before I answer that real quick. Do you
Sure.
think that the federal government should pass legislation to ban partisan gerrymandering?
I'm kind of neutral on it. I'm fine if they do. I'm fine if they don't. Gerrymandering long term isn't as effective as most people think it is. It's effective in these like short term moments, but then long term, like Wick has said, it's bit both parties in the ass pretty hard. So
Okay, well,
for
I
me,
mean,
I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm supportive of it. I just don't care that much, you know?
Until and if we ever pass federal legislation to ban partisan gerrymandering, obviously the Democrats can't just it can't just be the Democrats having
Sure.
independently decided districting versus Republicans that are gerrymandering. So we have to be retaliatory. We don't really have an option. I think we should push people out of the party if they're opposed to this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I get that more recently Republicans have been the ones that are kind of opposed the independent redistricting stuff. But I mean, a Republican was governor when it got passed in California. So, I mean, Republicans have supported it before. The lead supporter of it in California was Arnold Schwarzenegger. My main point being, Whick said at the very head of this, that the biggest problem right now is Trump and MAGA. And I think the Democrats would have a lot more success if they actually acknowledge the real biggest problem, which is what comes after Trump and MAGA. Because I think the retaliatory redistricting thing is very much an opposition to Trump and MAGA move. Whereas a support for federal legislation without doing that, and sort of a broad sort of marketing scheme around the fact that Democrats aren't doing this, that they're the ones that largely have independent non-gerrymandering commissions, is a little more focused on becoming a better off-ramp for people who weren't really politically affiliated before Trump and can't vote for Trump anymore. And I think one would lead you to a really good midterms and a bad 2028, and the other could lead you to good midterms and a good 2028.
Well, regardless of whatever measure Arnold signed into law, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I mean, California voters, we will amend the Constitution. Like, I guarantee you, we're gonna sign on to doing this now. So, but I think the way that you would forge consensus, like a national consensus around supporting federal legislation to ban partisan gerrymandering, is through this retaliatory strikes. Like, if we can demonstrate, if we can get Republican voters to say, hey, we don't like that, it's a very strong pitch to be like, guess what? We have a plan. We actually introduced a plan in 2021 and the Republicans blocked it. So if
I don't think it would pass. I don't think it would pass the California vote.
We will.
We will. 90%.
If it does, would you oppose it?
No. It's not a 90% threshold. That's not true. No.
I believe something passed by a vote in California. Is it not like a 90% state legislature threshold to get it to another vote?
No, I don't know where you're getting that. What do you? No, I think there's a higher threshold to pass it through the legislature. It's like 2/3 or 3/4, but we'll have the votes to do that. And once it goes to to the voters, I think it's just a simple majority.
This is a California voting population that voted to uphold the ban on affirmative action, voted against rent control, voted against a number of these things that Democrats really thought were just in the bag. I really don't think that the California voting to allow gerrymandering is something that they're going to. Californians largely don't like that we're essentially a uniparty in this state.
I don't know where you're getting that. But like when you look at the recent polling, it has double-digit support among California voters. I'm just so sure that we're going to pass this.
Hold on. Once it gets just to the thing, Jebtan, if it does pass, would you be okay with it?
With what?
The gerrymandering.
Amending the Constitution.
Oh no! I wouldn't really care. I don't think it's that effective, and we're already
a uniparty in California, or not, right? And fair.
It would be effective in terms of like saving us. We would be counteracting the aggressive gerrymander in Texas. They're going to pick up 5 seats if they do that. We're going to cancel that out with our legislature. So that's just
sure. In the short term, I don't really care that much again about gerrymandering. California is already basically, like I said, we're a uniparty at this point. So I'm not necessarily worried about us gerrymandering. I'm saying for the Democrats' sake, I think you guys would have a lot better 2028 if pure opposition was not the playbook and it was more a development of an on-ramp. I think you have serious conflict within the party because you have guys like Pete Buttigieg that are working on building the off-ramp for voters, and then you have a lot of other people who are worried about shitting on Pete Buttigieg for doing
I would be shocked if Pete Buttigieg opposed this measure, but like it or not, buddy, we are going to amend this Constitution. We're going to fucking gerrymander the shit out of that map.
I highly doubt it, actually. I do not think it.
How about you guys make a wager?
You can't stop us. You don't have the numbers.
Well, let's make a wager.
I don't think it's Republicans that are
Jebtan, let me ask you. If they pass
it,
will you come and apologize to Hutch for doubting him?
Sure.
Okay, great.
You don't need to do that. It's fine.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. This is more. It's not. I don't think it's going to pass by a crazy margin, but
okay,
not a crazy margin,
fail by a crazy margin. But
no, we're going to pass it.
Okay, Jebtan, thank you for calling in. I do appreciate you. We'll have a great day.
See you guys.
Hey, and just to be clear, I'm not okay with them just unilaterally violating their Constitution and not voting on it, right? That's obviously something I'm not okay with, right? But
we will amend the Constitution. We will do it through a democratic process.
Is designed the Constitution is designed to be amended, and if you do it the right way, I'm fine with it. And it's good actually to do it. I think that the gerrymandering thing, if they're going to gerrymander, we should gerrymander too. It's just a thing. Okay, Hutch, thank you for coming on. Do you have any last thoughts or last words for my audience here?
Nope. Enjoy the conversation. If you guys are interested in more, I stream Sunday through Friday. YouTube.com/Hutch, Twitch.tv/Hutch. Start at about 9:30 a.m.
Check him out, gang. We love Hutch here. He's a great guy. Have a great
Thanks for having me
day,
on.
buddy.
Forgot to say that.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
No problem. What do you
Thanks,
think?
Hutch.
How do you think that went?
I think that was a fun conversation. There were, there's like always a million things to talk about. So some stuff that we didn't get to, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a fun conversation. There was enough agreement and disagreement to keep it lively.
I agree. I thought it was see, here's the thing. I largely directionally I agree with Hutch on most issues, right? I think he's largely correct and his instincts for the party are correct. We do have some quibbles on different tactical things, right? And I think that he is maybe a little too lenient towards certain things, but he's coming my way. I think he's coming my direction in this, and it's only a matter of time before he's a full Whick guy in this.
He's a force for good.
Yeah.
He just doesn't perceive some of the threats that we perceive as
He will though. I think he'll
dire.
come around. He'll come around. I do wonder, right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm wondering where the breaking point will be. I don't know if there will be one, but if it comes, and when I'm talking about the live and learn crew, right? Will there be a point where they're like, okay, we can't, this is like a bridge too far for us? Do you think, first of all, my question to you, do you think that such a point will come in the next year?
If it comes, it's going to be a difference in how they come to view this like sort of amorphous group that we're talking about. Like, I don't think that any of these gentlemen are going to like turn into crazy extremists that we are sort of decrying now. I don't know. I think they seem to have a really good rapport. They seem to respect each other. I'm not hoping for their downfall. I'm not cheering for it. I don't even necessarily think it's inevitable, but I think if there is a split, it's going to come down to similar lines of what our split is with Hutch in terms of just like how much of a threat do these people each perceive this extremist group basically to be.
We'll see. It will be interesting to see play out. And to be clear, I hope that we have a strong liberal presence in the ecosphere. I look, and maybe I'm just gonna whine a little bit here, but sometimes I feel like the last liberal, like the last of the Mohicans, only is the last of the liberals, right? I feel like I'm the only guy sometimes that defends actual liberal values, right? And I felt that way. I've felt that way for a while now. I feel like everyone's kind of going crazy, and I don't know how exactly to stop it. But Hutch is a good egg. I think he's on the right track.
Yeah.
He's another strong liberal voice, and we need more of those. IRI, gang, if you don't watch I'm Really Important, you should. He's another really strong liberal voice in the space. But other than that, there's Destiny, but Destiny's got his problems, right? Who else?
What I wanted to say. This is something that I wanted to say. When Destiny came up and when we were talking about like examples of who's good for this, Destiny has lots of flaws, obviously. We don't need to like relitigate all of that. But what makes Destiny the true omni-liberal is he's gone through all of these arcs of casting out the extremists on both sides. And he talks about this as an active measure that he takes in his community to make sure, because he knows that when you start to talk shit about one side or one ideological movement or whatever, that you're going to attract haters of that side, even if they're not your ideological, comrades. And so, like, what gives Destiny, I think, like, to me, more credibility, and I know everyone likes to say, oh, well, Destiny, was totally against Trump, and he would have said to vote for Kamala, and yes, obviously, these things are objectively true. But what gives Destiny my respect and the true liberal bona fides, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that he had his like anti-left arc. And granted, he did that in like 2022, which is arguably strategic, right? It wasn't like leading up to the election. He wasn't banging away on how bad the left is, you know, in the run up to the 2024 election. He had kind of gotten past that. If anything, he was back on a sort of like anti-right arc and even anti-centrist arc by that point. But Destiny does like sees the actual threat of, yes, the Marxist Leninism, but also the woke stuff. Chat's very upset with me using the word woke because apparently it doesn't mean anything. But that's what gives him like legitimacy, I think, and credibility as like a true liberal in that way.
I just think that
Yeah.
I think oh look, I'm not going to sit here and like critique. Well, here's all the things that Destiny does wrong, but I think that he ruins it in large part by his edginess, if you want to call that, not as well some of the scandals surrounding him, right? But that it makes him less strong of a voice. I agree with you that politically, I'm pretty aligned with Stephen on a lot of things. We have quibbles, but fair enough. But yeah, that's when I say strong voice, that's what I mean. Like I think he could be much stronger, right? If he just dropped the dead kid jokes. It's not a hard ask, is it? I don't know. Okay, gang. This was fun. I've enjoyed it at least. Tali, do you want to close it? Oh, but I don't know if you know my schedule. So I'll just give you my schedule. Okay, so tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Tomorrow.
Big week.
Yeah. On 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do some call-ins. It'll be just call-ins. It's just going to be me, no co-host, and just take your calls. Thursday, it's going to be the omni-liberal himself, Destiny, is going to be taking on Econoboy on the subject of socialism versus capitalism. It's going to be a one-on-one debate. They're going to get into it. It should be really fun. And it's not going to be look, it's not going to be as chaos as my panels usually are because there's just two of them. So I'm hoping there'll be some actual substantive discussions here. It'll be fun. It'll be very enjoyable. And then on Friday, we're going to have Holly's favorite person, Soy Pill, okay? We're going to have Enemy Charlie. We're going to have Irrelevant. We're going to have Shenandoah, Chairman Shenandoah. And we're going to talk if socialism is actually a threat to liberalism. Some people disagree with me. I think it is, but you know, we're gonna have a little fight about it, a little panel about it. It should be fun. So tune in there, and that's what we got planned. Next week we're gonna have a great guest. I'm sure we'll figure out who it is, Tali, right? But we'll get something rolling.
I'm gonna be gone.
Oh,
my vacation officially starts next week.
Okay. No Whick and Tali show next week, I guess. But until she gets back, I'll have to hold the fort, and we'll do something. Okay. With that, any last words, Tali?
No, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This was fun. The chat was. I'm always trying to balance how much time I spend reading and participating in the chat versus paying close attention to what people are saying over here in the voice call. But I think that was great. I'm gonna miss all of you Wickers while I'm on vacation. But Wick, just so you know, Big Brother Tali is always watching. I will be connecting to Wi-Fi just to make sure I don't miss any Wick TV panels, and I'll be in the chat arguing with people while I try to relax.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
$10 from Pondering Politics. What's your take on the gerrymandering wars? Way to say you didn't watch a show without saying you didn't watch a show. Okay. Long and short of it, gerrymandering, good. It's been something we've been doing since before I was born, right? It's not a thing, and I think it's
within the toolbox.
Yeah, as long as look, I would be against it if they just did it by fiat, but they're going through the process. They're getting the constitutional amendment in California they need done. It's probably going to pass. That's the way you do it, and good on you. You should. If Texas is going to do it, I think it's based that we do it too. I think it's based that the Texas legislators, the Democratic legislators, went to Illinois. I think that's based. It's a based way to stop bad legislation from coming in. Good on them. So that's my take. Pondering Politics. We got maybe after your vacation we'll have Josiah on here. I would love to discuss a lot of these things with Josiah. It should be fun. We'll reach out. We'll figure it out. We'll get some good guests on there.
that would be super fun.
Okay. And with that, we're gonna end the stream. See you guys later. Bye. Bye. Bye.
See ya.